Hey guys, Dark Humility here. You can always catch me at www.twitch.tv/darkhumility. 6 to 7 days a week, typically playing Diablo 2 and doing Diablo 2 related content, all kinds of variety, everything from PD2 first to standard Diablo 2, and of course D2R when it's released. Guys, today I have a special guide for you. This is a Zeal Paladin guide where we're going to go over the standard setup, all the setups whatsoever on my softcore Holy Grail project on my single player. All items are solo self-found, so they might not be necessarily the best representations of the items you can have on a Zeal Paladin under any cases. However, these items are very solid and they've all been found, so that in a lot of ways they're more realistic. Of course, you can always catch this build guide and the rest of my build guides on my YouTube under LOD guides, or for the Project Diablo 2 ones under guides as well. Alright guys, so here we go. Zeal Paladin. Overall, he is a strong A tier build. He's not an S tier build. He's not the top tier, not a top tier build necessarily for anything, but he's really strong overall. He does everything extremely well, and he can destroy the entire game. There's almost nothing he can't do. He just does buttloads of damage no matter what, as long as you have a weapon. So the weapon's the most important thing, and everything else is meant to kind of help the weapon, help your attack speed, and help you survive. And of course, for standard gameplay, magic finding, also very important. We'll go over, of course, all these different setups, which honestly, they don't really differ too much from the standard setup. And keep in mind on this particular guide, the Zealer, even though I'm going to show different setups for different scenarios, there are so many items you can use. I'm going to use a grief every time, but there's also so many different weapons you can use. And if you use different weapons, just keep in mind your attack speed that you're actually going to weapon you equip, and then put on more attack speed items accordingly. However, grief is the best weapon and LOD period, so we're just going to use the best weapon. And for all these like variations, there's definitely other ways to do them. So there's all kinds of items you can use. I'm going to just try to display as many as I can today, but I'm going to get down to brass tacks now. So this is a Zealer. Zealer is a bit of a monster. He is pretty crazy stuff, just overall. I really love this build. This is like one of my favorite builds just to play, just randomly. Can't really go wrong playing this build. I hope you guys have fun checking them out. So we're going to start with the stats on the standard version of the build. One thing I should also say is that the Zealer is incredibly like noob friendly as well. The playstyle is noob friendly. He's very easy to learn, which is one reason why it's really fun to play him. So hope you guys enjoy once again. All right, so let's go over kind of his stats and kind of what you're looking for on a standard Zealer. So since I'm wearing grief, you can't really see my damage. Flat damage on grief that is added to both the minimum and maximum damage. The 392 stat does not display on the character screen, but is likely I'm doing probably upwards of about 13,000 damage on the high end right now. If I want to get as much damage as possible, and in general, you want to put just as much strength as you need to wear your gear. He can be pretty squishy, even though he's got a ton of max block, especially in high player count. But you can put additional points into strength if you want to max out his damage more. Choice. Dexterity. You're going to want to get max block on this character. This is a Paladin. Paladins have Holy Shield, which is the most broken skill for getting max block in the game. So if you have Holy Shield, which you should always have on a Zealer, you're going to want to make sure to get max block. Bases like Sacred Targes tend to be better for that because they have more default max block. In general, it's a very solid thing. 164 dexterity in there to get max block on this particular setup. However, just get as much dex as you need. It's based on your shield and character level. You are going to have to put more points every time up in order. Alright. Vitality. Just put the rest of the points into there after you put into dex and strength as you have to or want to. And no points into it. Res, it's a good idea to max out your res most of the time on a Zealer. You're going to be getting really close up to the monsters. You want to be taking a lot of damage, especially high elemental damage monsters, so I do recommend maxing out your res on this build. As always. How you doing, guys? What's up, chat? Remember, you guys can ask any questions, and you guys can add this guide if you'd like. And feel free, guys. Feel free. All right. So one thing to note here is that we do have a pretty sizable amount of Magic Find. You, of course, can focus more on damage and less on Magic Find. It's kind of preference. Magic Find is really good for farming, so this character is actually a better farmer than a lot of people might think. So we're going to farm with him. On the main hand, we only have 20 FCR, which doesn't really hit a very impressive faster cast rate frame. On our offhand, though, on the standard version of the Zealer, we have a 48 faster cast rate, which is not bad. We're going to want to be teleporting on our offhand most of the time. Make sure that our mobility is really high. Teleporting mobility is pretty solid. You can also, of course, charge, especially if you don't have Enigma. You don't have to really worry about faster cast rate too much. You have no source of teleport, but if you at least have charges or you have Enigma, you're going to want a decent amount of faster cast swap. Attack speed. You're gonna want a pretty solid amount of attack speed, but I'm not gonna lie, we were actually overstacked on our attack speed quite a bit, using grief and fanaticism. But just grief and fanaticism, you actually in a phase blade, you actually hit max attack speed already. We do have some items though that are good for other reasons that also give us attack speed, so we're overstacked on it. In general, though, without fanaticism, you're going to want 72 increased attack speed at least on a phase blade. And if you have fanaticism, you just need a grief and fanaticism. That's it. And faster hit recovery. Faster hit recovery, definitely not hitting a very impressive faster hit recovery at the moment. We are hitting 27, but since we're going to be mostly relying on our max block, that's not a big problem. Build. And let's see. We have a lot of increased damage to demons, so if we encounter demon monsters, which Zealers tend to be really good at, especially if you use your Zealer in Chaos or Travancore, important as well. And Life Leech and Mana Leech are definitely very good stats to have here. Definitely recommend getting at least some source of Life Leech and Mana Leech on this build, but you don't necessarily need a ton. And Deadly Strike and Crushing Blow. Crushing Blow will be even more important against the Ubers, and Deadly Strike is always very important. So we have a very high Deadly Strike stat, which is awesome. So that's going to double our damage 71% of the time. Alright, matter of fact, if you can get it higher even, if you want to focus on more damage, you can. Talk about the options once we get to the gear. Alright, the standard Zealer skill tree. Standard Zealer skill tree is honestly very simple. There's a general theme, is that no matter how you play the Zealer, there's always like one optimal mercenary setup, and there's always one optimal skill tree setup. One of the reasons it's noob friendly is not just the playstyle, but it's kind of simple. Like skill allocations is really simple. You just have to max out Zeal, max out its synergy sacrifice. You're just going to be using Zeal. You're going to want to max out Holy Shield just for a higher defense and for high chance to block to save those dex points. Of course, you have 1 point to charge and you have 1 point smite as well, which can come in handy. Once again, of course, if you don't have Enigma, charge is going to be really nice to have around. We can demo that, of course, in a bit. And then, of course, we have 1 point to Vigor. Vigor is nice just to have in town, which apparently I don't yet. So running through town is nice. Mostly is used to run through town, but a cool trick is that with charge, of course, plus Vigor, you can actually charge farther with higher, faster, and walk off vigor than you could if you were not using vigor. I noticed that now we're not charging as high of a distance, so vigor is very nice in general, just very nice quality of life. I think it's worth that 1 skill point on this character.
Yes.
And then you're also going to want to max out Fanaticism, besides the 3 skills that you maxed out here in the offensive tree. Fanaticism is your main damage aura, so you're definitely going to want to max that one out. You're going to want that aura active when you're trying to deal damage at all times. Zeal. And then the rest of the points you can split between Defiance and Resist Lightning. I like Resist Lightning a lot on the Zealer. That's because a lot of the most dangerous monsters, or especially against like Uber Mephisto, if you want to also use him as an Uber killer, we'll demo today. Is it's really nice to have that extra light res, especially against Black Souls. I also use him a lot in Worldstone Keep. So because I use him a lot in Worldstone Keep, Black Souls spawn there all the time, and they're very dangerous. Mitigate the damage from those, having Resist Lightning is nice. And if you put points in Resist Lightning, you can even forego Thunder Gods in a lot of cases, so you can maintain other build options. It's not a bad idea. There's really nowhere else you can put your points for damage except for Zeal, Sacrifice, and Fanaticism on this build. So you're kind of forced to like find like utility skills that can help you. Every 2 points you put into Resist Lightning will increase your max Lightning res by 2. So right now we have 85 Lightning res. That's the primary goal of this whole build here, and it's pretty solid to have 85 light res. Even with no Lightning Absorb, that's going to be very nice against Souls, and it's going to be very nice in case you want to buy Uber Mephisto. And against other high sources of lightning damage, like Lightning Maidens, Stone 3. Defiance. You can choose alternatively to put all your points into Defiance instead of Resist Lightning. Heck, you could even just put all your points in Resist Lightning and higher max light res. But Defiance is the synergy for Holy Shield, which will give you even higher defense. Holy Shield is active, you get even more defense. So it's giving us a lot of extra defense there, which is not a bad thing given that we're going to be jumping right into the monsters, taking a lot of damage. So overall, mitigating damage and dealing damage is all this build is about. It's pretty simple, and every single variation of the Zealer is the same. There's pretty much no changes I would ever make to this character unless maybe you were like a pure Chaos Farmer. You could always consider putting points into Resist Fire maybe to increase your fire res. If you use Phoenix though, I almost think that's unnecessary because I already have 85 fire res and I also have 19 fire absorb. So, and if you want, even put points in Resist Cold, or like I said, you can just put them all in, depending on what you're doing. Or all right. Next up is the gear. So we're going to go over the Mercenary real quick. The Mercenary, you're going to want the Mercenary to be an offensive Nightmare, Act 2 Mercenary for his Might Aura. Having Might Aura is a big boost to your damage. Having Might plus Fanaticism, which is what I'm currently using, having his Might Aura plus my Fanaticism is going to... I really wouldn't use any other options on this build because nothing really is super optimal. Warhammer, it's the Zealer guide, baby, and we're going to be featuring, of course, a build that you know and love, a build you helped me out with back in the day, and we're actually going to be featuring that soon. Right now we're doing the standard Zealer, though, so we're doing the standard setup, quote unquote, so it's a little different from the one you're used to, but we're going to do that one too, show off that one because it's kind of neat. Using your points to reorganize? Nice. Alright guys, so we have a Act 2 offensive mercenary with a Reaper's Toll. Reaper's Toll, there's pretty much, you're not going to be able to get better than a Reaper's Toll. It's consistent application of Decrepify, which is negative 50% physical res on the monsters, which basically increases your effective damage by 50%. It's pretty crazy. That's a lot of damage you get from Decrepify. There are ways you could get Amplify, but they're a lot more inconsistent, so Decrepify is usually what you're going to want to be for. Ethereal Reaper's Toll isn't necessary, but Ethereal Reaper's Toll in general is going to be a lot better just in general. So yeah, it's good stuff. Makes him do a lot of damage. And with Fanaticism plus Reaper's Toll with an attack speed jewel in it, like an attack speed or just a shale in it, will actually get him to the maximum attack speed, which means you don't need attack speed on the rest of his gear, which has some important ramifications. One thing it means is that you can use like a cham on him so he doesn't get frozen, and he also does a crap ton of damage as well. I don't currently have 2 chammed G faces on my pluggy here, so we're going to just show this one for more attack rating so that he's more likely to hit a little bit to apply to Decrepify. It's not hugely significant, but the attack rating is nice. It also is giving him unnecessary amounts of attack speed. But just Fanaticism. Actually, no, I'm not using it backwards. I'm using a... so like I said, Torque Hammer, I'm actually doing a different build right now. I'm doing the Phoenix build, so we're going to be showing that one first. I know, he has the one that I'm going to want to use soon, but this is a different helmet. What's max attack speed? Just the max frames. So the mercenary is attacking at max frames. I don't remember how many frames it is, but it's pretty high. See, all you need is... Fanaticism is broken. Like, the attack speed this gives you is so crazy. It's not just damage, it's attack speed, and it also helps the mercenary. So the mercenary doesn't need attack speed anyways. If you use G-Face, you also get a lot of Crushing Blow and Deadly Strike on the mercenary as well, in addition to more Deadly Strike on the Reaper's Toll. And, of course, the Reaper's Toll gives him his Life Leech, which he needs for defensiveness so he can survive. And then we have Fortitude, of course, on top of that, so he does even more damage, 300% enhanced damage. He has a ton of defense. He has life and all res, and Ethereal Bug base. This is a very optimal setup for a Zealer Mercenary in general, except, like I said, if you had another Cham G-Face on top of that, you can make him not be frozen, which would in some ways be... Alright. That's pretty much it. If you go like more attack speed from other sources, it's not necessary. So there's a lot of ways in which this is very optimal. Getting the life leech here, so you don't need a Darrell's Visage. It's just a really good setup in general. And also the mercenary gets 80% light as well. His damage, he doesn't currently have his Might Aura active. You can see just from my Fanaticism, he's at 7,000 damage. If I remember to show it again, I'll show the damage. He's got his Might Aura active, so stuff. Alright. Next up, of course, is our gear. So, this is the strongest weapon in Diablo II LOD for physical damage dealers. Brief. And in a Phase Blade, it is indestructible, and it's in the fastest base. The base damage doesn't matter a lot because it's all about that damage X stat, that damage 392 stat we see there. All about that stat. I've rolled very good. So that is a very GG base just in general. Yeah, it's just really good stuff. You can't get better than this, but there are other configurations and other items you can use on a Zealer. There's a lot of them. You use like Death, you could use Doom if you want more survivability from its Holy Freeze aura. You can use an F Rune Master with 2 low runes, a Zod rune, and 15 attack speed ED jewels in it. You could use Ethereal Death Cleaver. You could use a lot of stuff. Breath of the Dying. But none of that stuff is going to be as strong as Grief. It's just the hard truth. You can even use crazy like rare Ethereal Fool's weapons. But Grief is just that strong. It's too strong. It has crazy deadly strike. That damage is adding to both the minimum and maximum damage, which gives it higher damage than anything else you can get. It's crazy. Ooh, nice. Nice fiber. Hey, you could do that if you want. You could do that if you want. But yeah, so you're not gonna be able to beat that one basically. Enigma. So on the standard version of the build, we are a Zealer. So we're a teleport Zealer. We teleport directly into monster packs and crush them. That is the idea. Teleport using our swap, and then we crush them with this. So Enigma also gives us a lot of other very useful stats as well, like damage reduction, strength, as you find just for basic farming. Nothing beats this armor, period. So this armor is just incredible. It is expensive though. We will be, of course, going over a budget setup, quote unquote, or at least an idea of a budget setup, so you guys can at least see that at some point as well. All right, G face. Most of the time on a physical damage character, G face is going to be your DPS option because of how much crushing blow and deadly strike it gives. Put a Cham in it, which is our source of cannot be frozen. You definitely want cannot be frozen somewhere on the build, because if you get slowed down from being frozen, that's going to really impact the performance of your character big time. It's also giving us our only source of faster hit recovery, and it's giving us additional strength, which isn't bad just for damage or being able to wear more gear. So, in general, really can't go wrong with this helm. There are other options we'll talk about with some other setups like ages and a couple other cheaper options as well. But in general, this isn't a very expensive option. It's pretty easy to find as well. But putting a Champion into it makes it literally the most elite helm in the game. High Lord's Wrath. It also doesn't get better than this in terms of your amulet. Of course, there are teleport charge ammies you can use for other builds, but this one gives you a huge deadly strike and attack speed. Overstacked attack speed is actually really good, especially when you get a certain amount of it, which we'll talk about with a different variant. But for this one, it's just really good overall with the deadly strike skill, lightning res, and just some bonus attack speed in case. I think it can give you an additional frame if you get decrepified or something. If you get slowed down by decrepify, you might be able to maintain your attack speed a bit. You're not going to lose as many frames from your max attack speed. All right. Another thing to note is, there are some other options maybe, but mostly for teleport if you're not using it. All right, Phoenix. Phoenix is sick on this build. There's a lot of reasons. The redemption, of course, can help out your survivability quite a bit. Can also help out your mana, so you can start teleporting after you kill monsters. But you mostly use this for the enhanced damage stat. There's no other item in the shield slot that gives you 350 to 400% enhanced damage. Now, unfortunately, the roll on this, unlike the roll on our grief, is actually pretty garbage. So it could be up to 400% enhanced damage. But yeah, in terms of damage, you're not going to be a Phoenix. We made it in a all res base, but if you wanted to have even more damage, I don't know how you get your resistances up in PvE without the all res base on a Phoenix Pally Shield, but you could also run like an ARE Phoenix as well for damage. You could get upwards of like, I think it's 465% ED potentially on it. That's pretty rough. You could definitely do it if you want. I did, Lydia, and it's a very sad story. Exclamation USA 16 if you want to see that story. You can see it live. Yeah. I hope you're doing well though. All right, so I hope you had fun as well. That's good stuff. Okay. But yeah, it's also a lot of life, and it's max light and fire res. So this helps with survivability just too, not just the enhanced damage. One thing that's kind of janky about this though is that when you cast Firestorm, it can actually interrupt your Zeals, which isn't a big deal because you attack so fast anyway, and you can just keep Zealing. Just keep in mind you can become stopped in your tracks from that, so it can interrupt your DPS a little bit. That's why a lot of people prefer other options like Hawes, especially in other situations. But we'll talk about other major options. We will be using a Herald of Zakarum as well today, and also an Exile for Ubers. This is, of course, a really solid option. The standard one, who's really good at doing Trav, Chaos, and just a bunch of things in general. Also, that Fire Sword is really nice for Trav and Chaos because there's a lot in there. All arms. This is pretty straightforward. This item has battle orders and battle command, and it's going to buff up your life mana by a huge amount. And of course, the better it rolls on those, the better. To 6 on the battle orders. We got a perfect roll on this one, so it's solid. Make sure that whatever base you put this in, make sure it's not ethereal, so you don't accidentally start swinging it and destroying it. You can put Call to Arms in ethereal bases, but for this build, do it because you're going to be swapping your weapons a lot, and you can do it on accident. Spirit's Sacred Charge. We do want a Spirit on this build. We absolutely want a Spirit. The roll isn't super important, but we want to make sure we have at least 48% faster cast rate with all of our gear, which is, in this case, these 3 items. So make sure it rolls at least decently in that regard. If you make it in an all res or a very high all res base, this one's a 44 all res base, it's even better because you're going to be teleporting on swap a lot. You don't want to get wrecked by elemental damage while you're teleporting, so it's good to make it in a solid base. So it was green. It was very green indeed. Very sad. Okay. How was it? Was it good? Hope it was good. But anyway, it also gives you mana for teleporting. This thing's gonna give you the FCR you need for the belly swap. That's the key there. And also it gives you 2 skills for your CTA, so it's gonna boost your CTA. Alright. Laying of Hands. Laying of Hands is pretty no-brainer. The reason why Laying of Hands is so strong on most melee builds is that it gives you a bonus attack speed, of course, to hit those attack speed frames even while decrypt, like I said earlier with the High Lords. But it also gives you 50 fire res, so it's really good for your fire res. You might notice that without it, my fire res is a lot more difficult to get to. And of course, the big one, the 350% damage to demons. That's a stat that's also on Grief, but not as high. It's going to make us do a ton of damage to even monsters like Council members and the Venom Lords in Chaos, for instance. So once again, this build in a lot of ways is extremely good at Chaos. And Trav, and of course, is very good in the pit as well. We'll talk about that. Very nice, very nice. This is a 10 FCR rings. This is going to help us get to that 48 FCR, but it's also giving us Mana Leech and Magic Find and Attack Rating. All those stats are going to be really solid just in general. Really good stuff. Really, really, really good stuff. Sounds good. Sounds good. What you got? Okay, String of Ears. String of Ears, so in general on your rings, before I go over the String of Ears, I should go over the rings. So the rings, you want to hit that 48 FCR if possible. You can also go with 32 FCR teleport. It's not a big deal, so you don't necessarily need faster cast rate. But in general, faster cast rate, attack rating, leech, maybe mana, all res, magic find, those are all going to be really good stats, even like life on top of that. These rings are pretty solid for what I've found. You can definitely get that, of course. And then, of course, you could also use Raven Frost, for instance, if you don't have the Cham in Helm, if you want to put like ED, like a damage jewel in there instead. So there's definitely other ways to do this. Something I'd like to emphasize with the Zealer, which I emphasized in the beginning, was that, once again, there's always more options. String of Ears is really nice, though. It gives you a lot of life leech. It gives you 15% DR up to 15% DR. It gives you MDR on top of that. That's a lot of good survivability. You don't have damage reduction anywhere else on the standard build. So it's going to be really nice to wear that. That being said, though, you can even use options like gold wrap if you wanted to. If you didn't need the extra life leech, or if you didn't want to use the damage reduction, go for magic find with gold wrap. You could go for vitality with dungos, which we're going to use in other versions of the build, and you can also do there as well, like with Nosferatu's coil to hit 113 attack speed. We're going to talk about that. So, in general, though, String of Ears is very solid. String of Ears is very, very good. Just gives you that life leech, gives you that damage reduction. It's going to be a very solid build for this build. And then have War Travelers. Now, this is one of those places, once again, where you can choose to swap out more damage for Magic Find or vice versa. These boots are solid, though. I did not upgrade it, actually. You can also upgrade, of course, the String of Ears to a Spiderweb Sash if you want. You can also upgrade these to mirrored boots, except because I have enough strength on this version of it, but I wouldn't worry about the numbers too much once again, because I'm trying to wear all the gear showing off. It's all about getting the max amount you need to wear your gear, or to get more if you want to increase your with strength points. But war traps are really solid, so it's 15 to 25% damage. I mean, not percent, sorry, flat damage. 15 to 25 flat damage. That's a lot of extra damage, and it's also giving a lot of magic fun. So these are going to be solid boots for a Zealer, especially if you're looking to have solid magic. If you want more damage, though, and you want to get your deadly strike even closer to 90%, you can use Gore Riders, which is going to be an option we're going to use in other versions of the once again. So Gore Riders are very good as well, and a really cheap option would be Goblin Toads, especially for bosses because of the Crushing Blow. Crushing Blow is especially effective, so it's going to be really good, or at least high HP enemies. Does the yes, it does, Vibrant. That's a good question, actually. Someone in the chat we had just asked a question about that flat damage on the Grief. Does that go towards the Mana Leech? Does the Mana Leech and the Life Leech key off of that flat damage? Yes, it does. That is one of the reasons why you Life Leech and Mana Leech so fast with the Grief, because it's doing so much damage. Overall, just in general. It's pretty cool stuff. And one thing to note about leeching in general is that leeching, you need to be doing physical damage. It has to be physical damage for the leech to matter, and on a physical damage Zealer, which is what this is, this whole build guide today, that is the key. We're not going to be going over, of course, like Tesladins and other versions of like elemental damage Zeal today, but it's all about the physical Zealer. But in those versions, the leech is not effective, so you don't show those builds. Sweet. Word. Why do I have some items in here? That's interesting. Alright, and then Charms. So, one thing to note here is for magic finding or just general use of this character, I really like charms like AR Magic Find. AR Magic Find charms are going to be really good on this kind of a character. Damage. It's all about that max damage AR magic. Just AR magic. It's really good stats. You need that AR. This version of the build I actually don't have a ton of AR, but it's okay. I'm actually going to pre-buff it, but that's because of some of the other items I'm using. So, trying to maintain my res a bit. Want to lose my res a bit, though. I could sacrifice some points into that if I want to. Set to go. One thing to note, of course, is that if your AR is lacking, you can even put some points into Blessed Aim if you want. It actually passively gives you attack rating if you put some points into it, which is kind of interesting. But, yeah, overall, you know. What I would focus on is just making sure attack rating and res where you can. Very passively, yeah. It's not a lot. It's I don't think it's a very good idea to do it because it's like you don't get that much out of it. You get way more out of like if I remove one charm, only eating attack rating on a charm is giving me 100 AR into my Zeal. So this is not a ton of attack rating, by the way. We would ideally want this a bit higher. For this purpose, though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Demon Limb to buff it. But if you don't have Demon Limb or you're not using Demon Limb, just make sure you have more attack rating in your charms. Besides attack rating, MF, and max damage, we're also using Res MF, which is really good for shoring up our resistances. Strangely enough, though, it's like our... That's actually too high. What do you know? Well, we can put that back. Yeah, there we go. We have more attack rating. Zeal hits so many times, though, attack rating might not be the most important. You're going to want that around like 8,000, 10,000 if possible. You need it insanely high, you just need it like... This is kind of low, so 6,800 is okay, but it can definitely be...
I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in
yeah,
this forsaken camp.
One thing to note is the ignored target defense and the negative target defense on the grief. That's going to help us out. That's one reason why the AR isn't going to be that important, which is why you could go as low as 6,000 or 5,000 even if you wanted to. But I kind of prefer this for killing, because the ignore target defense doesn't work against elite monsters. What someone just mentioned in the chat, so that's something to keep in mind. Ignore target defense does not work against elites and bosses. That stat doesn't do it. It works against minions and random monsters, so that's very important to know. And then, of course, there's life and res on some of our charms as well, just to shore up our resistances a bit more and make them insane for the purpose of being tanky while also having this magic find and dealing damage attack rate. Of course, there's a lot of other charms you can always add into the mix. There's these charms here like max damage, AR, life, GCs. These are really nice. You can have better ones, of course. You can have better versions of all these charms. You can have like 7 MF, 5 L res. You can have... This is a perfect version of the max AR charm, by the way. I actually did find a 100% perfect one. If you had a whole inventory of those, you're definitely balling for sure. Yeah, just keep that in mind. Stray Demon, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Cult of Xana Stay. Yeah, the negative target defense applies at half against elites and bosses, right? But the ignore target defense doesn't do. So, yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. And there's definitely some advanced mechanics you can get into there for sure. Stuff with some of those ignore target defense stats, which are good stats, very amazing stats. Geed's Fortune. I just like having this for our MF boost. It's just a really efficient use of Magic Find and then Torch, and as good as you can get. There you go. That is the standard gear setup. Kind of talked about some of the options. There's like life AR damage small charms as well if you want more life that way. There's all kinds of options in your charms just in general. Like if I show some of those real quick. You can see if you use like these small charms, you can become tankier. So yeah, there's all kinds of things you can do. It's just kind of shore up your stats, make sure your res is looking good, make sure AR is looking okay, and everything in general is looking pretty good. Damage is, it's all good. Alright, so one thing that's really handy to have on a Zealer in general, or just any physical damage character does physical damage, especially if you don't have conviction on the mercenary or whatever, reducing their defense using conviction. Really, you're gonna want a demon. Villain's gonna give you enchant. Lim has enchant charges. You use that on yourself. Now, voila! Look at that magic. We have almost 10,000 attack rating. If you're lacking attack rating, that can always help you out for sure. But like I said, it's not as big of a deal because some of those negative attacks, negative target defense stats, and because you hit so many times very rapidly with Zeal. Alright, so this build, in my opinion, is really good. So this version, the standard version of the build, is really good at farming pits, Travancore, and Chaos. There's other builds that are good, and there's definitely overlap with some of the other versions of this build. But this build's kind of the jack of all trades. You know, whenever I make a standard version of a build for a guide, it's the build that does the most amount of things decent or really good. If this is all you had as your gear setup, you can do everything. Maybe not 100% optimally, but you can do everything. It was, Roland. It was. Exclamation USA 16 if you want to check that out. Alright guys, so what we're going to do, make sure to cast your Holy Shield on your skill swap. They're going to want to teleport towards the pit. The pit is one of his stronger areas. We're going to be demoing him in player 7, so he can destroy even in high player count. Definitely I think a lot of people that think Zealers are weaker than they are. A lot of cases, they're actually as strong as a Hammerden or stronger, and not all cases, of course. You know, Hammerdens for like AoE clearing are always going to be better. But for killing bosses and for killing elite packs, and some elites specifically, he actually shreds them faster than a Hammerden even does in high. So let's watch him in action. Let's see what he's capable of here. So the pit is a max level area that can drop any item in the game. It's pretty solid. We can teleport on our FCR swap for our 48 faster cast speed. Of course, we can teleport on our main hand while the monsters are close to get in close and just smash them. We just jump right in. This build's really simple. Get as much FCR as you can on your offhand. Switch to your main hand, jump in, go to town. You can see that Decrepify is really doing work. Redemption is keeping us alive. And even in high player count, the monsters don't stand a chance. Yeah, rolling hammer. It was another Templars, man. We're up to 16 men. You know, it must be so discouraging to people that want to start a Grail to watch me find all these Templars. It really must be. I want to encourage people, but it's just like, well, you know, it's all about finding that Tyrells at the end of the day. We have a lot of magic find on this build. You never know. We'll find another unique Sacred Armor. This is not the Tesladin, though. He's got the same FCR as the Tesladin, though. So you want to make sure the Mercenary is positioned to where he's hitting the monsters that you're hitting. So that he's hitting the monsters and he's proccing Decrepify where you're killing the monsters. So that you get that negative enemy physical resistance. The negative 50 enemy physical resistance. It's going to maximize your damage output in all ways. And in general, you go hunting for elite packs. And then you just kill the whole pack. Or you just hunt for density and just shred it. It's fine. Very cool stuff. Demo that again in some other areas here. Some of this character's other strong areas are really... Of course, you can kill bosses with them, even with garbage gear. The budget version, I'll try to show that as well. There's definitely going to be other strong areas for this character, but for the standard build, Travancole's amazing for the Phoenix build because of the Fire Sword and the Fire Res, but also for that enhanced damage. It's just going to be really good in general. This is going to be P7. I'll show you guys P7 first. Players 3 Travancore is the most optimal player count for Travancore specifically, but we can still destroy them in P7 with this build. Orc is stone skin, but it doesn't matter much when we have Reaper's Toll and the Mercenary. So yeah, that was P7 Travancore. They just got wasted. And they drop, of course, tons of runes, charms, gems, jewels, and jewelry, and basic gear, like Shakos and things like that. So they're really good for all kinds of things. I did have a Templar's type exclamation USA 16 if you want to see the ID on it. Can you get the red stat info overlay, please? I could do that, I guess. I mean, I don't usually like showing that necessarily during a guide, but if it will help you guys out a little bit, I'll show that right now. There you go. So there's your red stat overlay. That's those are the stats we're currently using. The grief, we don't know the exact amount of damage because of grief, but it's been calculated to be somewhere between. Well, It's at least like 10 to 12k. I don't think I'm using enough max damage charms for that, but we'll see. So this is P3. Now P3 is the most optimal player count to kill them in because it's a good balance of their survivability and the drop rate, so you can kill them most efficiently. That time I got a bad roll on Ismail though, but as you can see on most of the other monsters, they get instantly destroyed. So feel free to just pump them for gold. You can even stack gold find if you want instead of magic find. Feel free to pump them for magic find, high runes, whatever you're really looking for. Travancore is going to be an excellent farming spot, especially for a Phoenix Shield Zealer. Which is really good. Phoenix, like, because of the Fire Sword and the Fire Res, is also going to be an insanely good choice for Chaos specifically. We're going to have to do P7 Chaos just to show you guys how strong he is with all this demon damage and fire absorb in here. You founded the Tesladin. He was one of the contenders yesterday in Battle of the Pit. Poison Necro absolutely wrecked him in Battle of the Pit. But then I found a Templars, believe it or not, off stream doing a couple of runs just to finish him off, just because I felt like doing a couple more runs, and he actually found that thing. It was the Tesladin. Tesladin found it. Alright, so we're back in P7. Good lord, yeah, I know. Look how tanky we are, though, because of all this fire absorb. It's really good stuff in general. Yeah, even in P7, we can shred these monsters pretty well. And we're very safe. We can, of course, just kill the elite, but... as you can see, when they're less physical resistant, they just get shredded. That one's a physical immune. We're breaking his immunity with the Prepify on the Reaper's Toll. Since we only do physical damage, that's another insanely important reason why we use Reaper's Toll. It's to break those physical immunities. Or at least make it to where Stone Skin is mitigated. That stat can be very hard. Can make it very hard to kill the monster. Yeah, all 40 of your channel points. That's right, Vibrant. You know, all 40 of them. But yeah, we're just gonna shred Chaos. We're gonna target the elites here and super uniques like Pulse. Alright. Teleport on your swap. You don't necessarily need to have max block on your swap, on your spirit, but you can get max block there if you want to. Look at that damage. Whew. Drop Shadow Killer too. Look at that monster. Can't get past the spot in normal. It's not that bad. Chaos is actually pretty dangerous in normal though. It's a huge power spike, so I can understand why normal might be kind of tough. But it's not that bad, man. You got this. Remember to keep swapping your main hand. If you try to kill them with your CTA, you might find it's a little difficult. Character is just a ton of fun, just like jumping right in the middle, just wailing on the monsters. You know, it's, I gotta say something. You know, this character might not be as efficient as some characters, especially in most situations, but it's still very efficient in a lot of ways. It's still very strong, but it's mostly just a ton of fun. Yeah, thank you for that. 500. Oh man, crazy. Now, one thing to note about bosses is that you can use Zeal to kill them, and of course, wailing on Diablo with Zeal and like whatever player count. We're in player 7 right now. Will always be a ton of fun. But one thing you can do is if you kind of get sick of missing him or whatnot, you can always switch to Smite, and then you can kill him with Smite too. Just 1 point into Smite is a really solid investment here. It's really good. You can make sure that you always hit with Smite, and since as long as you have a shield that does a decent amount of damage and you have Holy Shield, and you have a lot of enhanced damage and even the flat damage as well, Smite is going to do a lot of damage. So I can actually just choose to Smite down single targets if they become pretty difficult, and that's especially useful against bosses. That being said though, Zealing them is more fun in a lot of ways, so just take them down with Zeal, and that also works. In some cases, you can actually kill them faster with Zeal because you're doing more damage with your Zeal attack, but Smite is more consistent. Smite will also apply Crushing Blow, so it's something to keep in mind.
Good to see you.
Wow, that is a ring that, if it had higher dex, higher light res, and jeez, Louise, that could have been something. All right, so our buff ran out on the demon limit. It's kind of interesting. All right. So next up, favorite version of Diablo. For me, man, vanilla is probably always going to be my favorite version. That being said, you know, D2R is based off of it, so it's really good. I also really love Project Diablo 2. It's definitely my favorite mod. I'm not much of a mod person in general, but if there's ever was a mod that's not for mod people, it's that being said, there's some people who can't stand any kind of changes at all, and you know, to be fair, I don't agree with all the changes in that mod. It's definitely a lot of fun. All right. So what we're gonna go over next is something called the budget version of the build. So you've seen the ultra strong version of the build in some of his strongest areas, not all of his strongest areas yet, but you've seen them. And in general, it's really, really solid stuff. He's gonna be really strong just in general. This version of the build is also gonna be really strong at Nilithok farming because you have the Phoenix, so it's gonna have good redemption as well. And there's a couple other areas that this version also does very well at, but we'll farm those areas later on different parts of the build, spread them out. So what's interesting though is you don't need all this fancy gear. You don't actually need all this fancy stuff, and we're gonna prove it. So all we need in life. Take off the crazy rune words, use a very cheap rune word, and just use some basic stuff, basic uniques, and we can do pretty well. So this is going to be the budget version of the build, where we make it a lot cheaper than the max power version. That's going to be the goal of this here. Hopefully, we can succeed at that. So, interesting, actually. How much strength? Oh, need 13 strength. Let's see if I can figure this out here. In general, what's really important, well, we'll talk about what's important on the budget build, and it's really important when you're trying to build this build, basically. Kind of what we're going to go over here, just in general. Talk about the essentials, the bare bones. You don't need call to arms, though. We're going to take off all these, like, crazy expensive things. We can still get some teleport, though, which is kind of nice. And we're going to want to just put a charge on the purpose of demo. So you know, if you have a demon limb, if you're able to get your hands on some basic uniques and maybe, I mean, you can even use like Goblin Toes, but that Deadly Strike is so nice in Gore Riders. I wouldn't say Gore Riders is insanely hard to acquire. This ring just kind of represents any kind of like life leech ring you can get some stats on. It's maybe a bit better than a typical ring you could get your hands on, but that's okay. String of Ears, Laying of Hands. Laying of Hands is really cheap, but it's the strongest on the strongest version of the build, and it's still strong on a weaker version of the build. Gore Riders is still going to be pretty solid, and it's not War Traps. I'd say War Traps might be harder to get your hands on. These are pretty solid. Like this item in Hawes might be a little difficult to get, but they're not too bad. If you can get your hands on these items, you're definitely going to find yourself in an okay place. Yeah, no mana leech. You're right. There is no mana leech at all. Right. So one thing you might want is you want to make sure you have some mana leech on this build. I currently don't have any, but you should. You should also make sure you have cannot be frozen. So I'm not using a Champion because I'm not even socketing these, but if you could put like some runes in these, all three of these, it can help out your res situation potentially. And put some which are kind of cheap, you know, pretty cheap options. Getting like some source of mana leech would also be kind of nice as well. It's not better or even a dual leech. Dual leech should be in this category. I mean, I could use a dual leech if you want. Here. Let me see if I can actually, do I have a dual leech ring? I can demo this a bit better. I mean, I know what I'd want is like, I'd probably want the dual, but even though if I have one that really illustrates this, I think that's why I didn't pick it up. Probably not. Okay, yeah. Okay, you know what? How about we use this one? This ring will. I think this ring right here illustrates this concept a bit better. Yeah, but you know, you can. They have a point. You know, you should have some source of leech, right? We're going to be using a weapon that's really strong, but it's definitely cheaper. The F Cryptic Sword Oath. This is the best base for an oath. And this damage is going to give us. This is going to give us a pretty sizable amount of damage. Now, it's not going to be huge. Might notice that this is way lower than like 10 to 12k, right? So it's like not even close in a lot of ways. Another thing to note is on this version of the build, you don't have good charms either. So let's continue to strip some of his items here. So he doesn't have all this stuff would be considered way too expensive. This stuff is too rare. So in general, you're going to want to use some very cheap solutions if you have them. So all res GCs, all res small charms, maybe some single res small charms. FHR can be very nice as well. Yeah, this stuff's pretty crazy. So we're even gonna take off the wait, I guess we can't take those off. But in general, you could even make it to where you stat your character, where you don't even need a Torch and an Annie. So Torch and Annie are optional. If you can get a cheap Torch and Annie, that's cool and all, but you don't have to. You actually don't even need a Torch and Annie. You can do this totally without any of this stuff whatsoever. We can take all this stuff off. We can even take off the Torch and Annie if we wanted to. And they're mostly just providing us with res anyway. Maybe some extra HP, so it's not that big of a deal. Physical damage characters don't benefit much from the plus skills, so for the purposes of the demo, we can just leave them on. It doesn't really matter. In general, though, you can kind of see what the idea is, right? The idea is you want res. You're gonna want damage. Yeah, that's right, Stray Demon, that's right. Just whatever you can really find. Like, basic 3 damage charms are really nice for this. Obviously, though, you don't have to use those. That's a pretty cheap charm in general. Yeah, there's all kinds of cheap solutions. Like, this is another nice cheap solution here. Just whatever basic charms you can really get your hands on. So you'll notice I can still hit max res, and notice by putting on some max damage, like I could even use like just plain max damage GCs as well, or like plain AR GCs. So I can use just AR, still get that max damage AR life, however you want. But in general, that's kind of what you're going for. You can even put more life in here if you're feeling like your HP is really low. You definitely don't have as much HP on this version of the build. Okay. Alright, so have that one there. Still have our max block, strangely enough. Don't worry about, once again, the exact numbers, because I'd have to like respec them to optimize the amount of strength and dex. Like I said, we could even optimize it. You don't even need these two items. We'd have to put on more res charms, or maybe get more res on our rings, or put runes in our items. If we just put runes in our items, that can actually get your res a bit easier, and then you can even get your damage higher than this on a budget build if you use more damage charms. For the purposes of demoing, though, we're going really low tech for this, just to kind of show you guys what he's capable of still. Another thing we want to make sure we do is we strip the mercenary as well. Those are very high-end items on the mercenary. You don't need them. You don't need them. I can promise you that. It's not needed. I use Tosh's mask. Put on. I could just use whatever. Like, you can use. There's a lot of items you could use potentially for his armor. But you can even use like basic stuff like this. One thing to note is you could even use like a lion heart on yourself if you wanted to, because it gives you like ED, max damage, res, and things like that. So that's kind of nice as well.
I'll put that to good use.
I'm gonna use a Durus, but there's like other cheap options too, though. Generally, you just want some kind of cheap armor. You can also even use treachery if you want, but you don't need attack speed because remember you have fanaticism. Something. But yeah, we can go get a. So if we go get a whatchamacallit here, there's a Plane Reaper's tool. Just slap it on. If I had like some source of attack speed somewhere, he would actually hit as well. Scare. But for the purposes of just showing a pretty cheap setup, there you go. We're still getting that Decrepify, and he doesn't have as much damage on. We're just using random Reaper's Tolls to get that Decrepify. And we're using a lot cheaper stuff just in general. That kind of mercenary will survive pretty well. Anyway. So, you guys might want to see how this performs in general, right? So we're going to start in P7. We're going to do the pit again just to show you guys kind of the difference between the original one. We can move over it. We can use Vigor plus Charge to charge very far. It's kind of neat. Mercenary is still the same kind of mercenary, by the way. All the skills are the same. Stats, just trying to, of course, max out your strength like normal. Now, this is P7, so as you can see, we're definitely weaker without grief. But we can still kill stuff, surprisingly. Pretty cool, right? Even in P7, even in a full game, you can still kill things if you want. Now, we're using a teleport charge amulet to teleport. You could also use a Naja's staff on the swap if you want, but then you can't teleport as easily. One thing to note is if I teleport on my swap like this, I can actually teleport very fast. I can switch. and good to go. Reef is so strong, I know. There's other cheap options too, like you could use Honor, which is even weaker, but just kind of wanted to show you guys a bit of the difference here. See, there's a pretty big difference, right? But, you know, still getting pretty good res, which we can do with the runes in our gear if we use that. Still doing okay damage. Yeah, this is P7, yeah. It is, it's really slow. With the budget build is not very fast at clearing P7. I just wanted to show the difference here. We're actually going to go to P3 now so you guys can kind of see what he's still capable of doing. So we're actually going to go down player count. You can even do P1 if you want to like clear things really fast with him. But we don't even have CTA or anything, so we're just charging. You can always repair your teleport charges, by the way, if you want. But you can have fun with the Zealer even with that crazy expensive gear. Of course, you can even use cheaper gear than this, but it just will limit, you know, your damage output and it'll make it a little tougher. With really cheap gear, you might want to stick to Nightmare difficulty. Like things like Honor, for instance. Not a lot of damage output on this. There we go. So now we're in P3. Now that we're in P3, you can kind of see, right? You know. I noticed with my mercenary, his might aura, he's still doing 4,000 damage with the janky setup, right? And I'm doing 7,500 this setup. Actually, we're gonna remove the farm info panel because that was for the standard build. Okay, so yeah, we have different stats, but our stats are still okay, and we can make them even better by socketing our gear, and then we can play with our charms, and we can optimize it further if we want to, of course. But if you're trying to run a Zealer on a budget, that's fine. You can use the Wizard Spike if you want. So we can actually teleport pretty fast like that, right? Because we have Wizard Spike and Spirit on our swap, we can teleport very quickly. And Spirit and Wizard Spike are pretty easy to acquire items. Now notice, we're very squishy. With Amp and Fanaticism, we can die very easily. But because of our life leech, we're able to kind of maintain it a bit. Yeah, if you want to chain teleport, let's say I want to farm Pendleskin, which is something I can do. I can chain teleport, but we'll show that in a bit though. Yeah, I don't have CTA or anything. I'm in P3 hell. I don't have Phoenix. I don't have Grief. I don't have Cham runes. I don't have Thuriel Reaper's Toll or anything that's like super hard to get. We're doing just fine. But we can't really do P7 anymore. Like P7 was a lot easier on the ultra powerful build. So obviously we're, you know, this is a lot more low tech, right? So we can farm the pit though, we can still target the elites just like with the normal version of the build. Just gonna have to turn down the player count a bit. On BattleNet, that means that if you have a full party, it might be a little more challenging for you to do all of the damage. I need some help with that, right? Skill switching is a little tough though, you're gonna have to get used to that for sure. Yeah, in P3 it's actually not bad, right? So even if there's a couple people in your game, or if you're playing P3 on single player, this build can do the pit just fine. Indeed. That looks a little better. It's a lot better.
The order welcomes you.
We have even just Goblin Toes, we can kill bosses pretty well, so even if you have something cheaper than Gores, as long as you get some Crushing Blow, you can definitely manage. Looks like we ran out of teleport charges. One reason to use a staff with teleport over an amulet is that you get more charges. It's just that if you do that, you're going to be teleporting slower. So right now I'm just using an amulet and using this. If you have a High Lords, you can use like a staff like a Nages, and it will also work well. It's also a very cheap option. Shaft Stop's just so good because of the damage reduction. We're pretty tanky even without CTA with the Shaft Stop, which is the reason I'm using this. Other cheap options like Vampire Gaze work here, Rock Stopper. There's a lot of just really good items in general. Really going to be really solid, this version of the build. Getting at least some source of leech can be nice. String of Ears is still cheap. Notice that we almost have 50% damage reduction, which means even without a huge health pool, we're not going to die insanely fast from being amped and things like that, which is why I wasn't totally clapped by this fanaticism monsters with amp bit. That's why I like having DR on a cheaper Zealer. Like, having a lot more DR can be very helpful for surviving in these situations. Only to note is that, of course, if you're able to get some cheaper stuff, but you still want to farm in Dario with the Zealer early on, you definitely can. Zealer is very accomplished at boss killing. Very, very solid build in general at this. I'm on bigger auras, so I go faster. Okay, there. Switch to my aura. Okay. Yeah, Oath is the highest rune required in an Oath is a Mal. The main problem is the base. The Cryptic Sword is just so good because of how fast it is. So if you can get an Eth Cryptic Sword Oath, it's pretty nice. Or just somehow get your hands on this base. Yeah, a low rune, an LO rune and a Mal rune is a lot worse than just a Mal rune. Even budget-wise, you can definitely make this character work very well. We're gonna go kill her in P3. You can kill her in P5 if you want. Doesn't really matter. Notice as long as you have some crushing blow, like from a G-face or something. What just happened in our Zealer guide, guys? What? Alright, Endariel. Sure, you know, let's just find a Vex rune off of Endariel, just to let you know that it's not typical. That's actually extremely rare. Yeah, well anyway. So, just found a Vex from Endariel. Very cool. So, Endariel's highest rune drop is actually a low, but dropping high runes from Endariel in general is going to be really, really tough. Alright. Well, that's freaking awesome. Alright. It's not a Vex rune off of Hell Andy. Let's go. But yeah, he'll destroy the bosses.
Yes?
Since we don't have the flat damage on Grief though, and we're just using the enhanced damage off of Oath though, I might want to warn you guys that Smite isn't going to be quite as effective, but because we have Crushing Blow, we can still do that. I can show that against Mephisto if you want. But in general, it's going to be solid stuff. It's really, really good stuff in general. This character doing. One area we definitely can farm, of course, with just a budget build is we can always go ham in here, just farm the clickables or just farm the super chests. Of course, for that, you want to put it up to P7, making sure we get maximum odds out of the items. Oh, we're gonna stop there. You guys get the idea. We can click all the clickables. Clickables are a really good source of runes, charms, and jewelry and things of that nature. Bosses, of course, drop all kinds of useful items. Not normally high runes, but hey, I'll take it. Pay back the Phoenix? I guess so. That Phoenix didn't roll so well, did it? Yeah, that's a good point. Against P3 Trav. So remember we did P3 Trav with the Grief and we totally destroyed it? Well, you can still do P3 Trav or even P1 Trav. Not too much difficulty. Just make sure you got that fire res up. And make sure you have some DR. It's all about that damage reduction. Having a Dwarf Star on, actually, for this would be kind of nice. So right now we're not wearing a Dwarf Star, but we could if we wanted to. I'm not going to, though. Look at that. This is P3 with an oath, guys. Don't even need to grief or anything. Just make sure you get that laying of hands, get that fire res. Mercenary is not proccing his Decrepify though. Alright, there we go. Random Reaper's Toll, easy mode. So, as you can see, really good in Trav with this version of the build. Even cheaper versions, as long as you have your fundamentals. Trav can be dangerous though, so if you're playing on hardcore especially, keep that in mind. That's going to be a very dangerous farm. Still the pit in general. But, you know, if you ever have like Barbo or anything, I mean, you can just become invincible even with trash gear, so just depends though. Of course, we can also farm Mephisto, the basic version of the build. The fully kitted out version of the build, of course, it's more insane. Maybe we can show you guys how strong he is killing players 1 Mephisto, who still has a pretty good drop odds in general. We're gonna go kill him. Nice. Right, here we go, and bam. Look at that. Now I could also use Smite, so if I change the Smite here, you can see that we're still on. Wow, these drops, man. What the heck? Alright, well, I promise it's not rigged, guys. I promise I did not rig anything. Okay, it's not rigged. Wow. Okay, so that's a Viper Magi. Yeah, Lydia. Wow. Wow, this is crazy. Okay. Well, let's see. 35, easy. 21, yeah. Well, wasn't that cool. It wasn't that cool, but it was still pretty cool. Alright, so yeah, guys. As you can see, though, the budget version of the build can pretty much do all those budget areas. I can also show off some other areas the budget build does pretty well here in a second. I know. Like, just in general, even the Tesla got better loot himself, right? It's crazy stuff, right? Crazy stuff. But yeah. Anyway. Alright, so, you know, if you wanted to kill even P7 here, you could do that here if you are in a full party. You're still pretty weak, but you have some gear for this dude. Go farming Eldritch and Shank. As it does still take a little bit, especially unless you get the Crepify. You can definitely do P3 if you want. It's up to you though. You can go kill Shank in P3. Alright. Alright. Sweet! Monster's getting stronger, but don't matter. Good. Pretty crazy how fast you can teleport with a teleport Ami and like Wizard Spike and Spirit.
Can I help you?
This is especially a useful setup for farming Pendle Skin right here. So if you don't want to use the Nodge's Staff and whatnot, you want to do what I'm doing.
Good afternoon.
You want some mobility. You can always pop Pendle Skin with it. Now we don't have the Pendle Skin portal. Basically what you would do, let's see if we can actually get down there first. Look how good Decrep is. Wow. Ow. Oh, you know, we could kill areas like this too. It's fun, it's fun. I wouldn't say I wouldn't want to run Nilithok with this budget build because he's gonna kill you a lot. I'm not looking for Nilithok though, so that's the good news. I don't have to care about his gangly ass at all. Ow. Where is it? Ah. No! Die. There we go. Alright, poor Paladin, I know, he got wrecked. Alright. Bigger charge swap, let's go. Gonna run out of teleportations. Farming gold is not a bad idea. Alright, so what we're gonna demo is this. So we're gonna actually like go away. Let's say you have the Endo portal in Act 5 still, and you didn't get the Halls of Pain warp. I'm gonna show you guys this right here. So what you can do is you can enter this portal. Just go. Teleport with the Withered Spike really fast. Pop into it. Damn. Candle Skin always drops 2 items of at least magic quality or higher, and you can drop almost all the items in the game, unlike Shank. You can also kill you can also kill Thresh Socket if you want, but I like Pendle because Zeal hits all the monsters, and just killing one Thresh Socket kind of feels like a waste on a Zealer. But you can definitely do it if you want. Alright. That's pretty much it. You guys kind of get the idea. Zealers can be very strong without all that godly gear, and that's, you know, in general, that's the theme of the budget builds that I try to create. You know, you never need Enigma either, even on the budget builds I show Enigma on. You never really need it. Of course, it can always help, but if you can at least afford Enigma, but if not, you just use teleport enemies, teleport swaps. You can always go to town with other gear setups, always. And in this case, you don't have Enigma at all, so it's like, no, don't need it. No need it for this version. Alright, so I think that's pretty much it for the budget version of the build. Let's go into my favorite setup, and I think it's a lot of other people's favorite setup as well. No, Torkhammer in my chat. This is his setup right here. Torkhammer, let's go. This setup here is a lot of fun. Basically, the whole purpose of the 113 attack speed setup is to hit enough attack speed where if you get decrepified, even by Bale, you're not going to slow down. So any source of decrepify won't affect you at all. Basically means you're always going to be at the max attack frame. Even just Holy Freeze won't do the trick. A combination of Holy Freeze and Decrepifying will slow you down a little bit, but a lot. That is the whole impetus behind what build I'm about to show you guys here in a second. Let's make sure we get the correct items on though. We're gonna have to swap some things back out. Get the more expensive items on here. Why not? Alright, so we actually need Oz Coil. Use Ravenfrost. I'm actually going to use... So on this setup, we're actually only going to have 32 faster cast rate when we teleport. So we're going to have a bit of a slower teleport, but that's fine in areas like Chaos and Bale. Where this build really shines is in areas where you can be repified. And you can be slowed down by the monsters in general. And this build really destroys in these kinds of areas. So I'm going to show you guys what we can do in these scenarios. We're actually going to use Gore Riders in this case. You don't have to though. You can still use Ward Traps. Remember I said they were pretty much interchangeable? Well, in this case we're going to go some Magic Find. Doesn't really matter too much what you do on this. Paladin. Okay, let's put all the budget stuff away. Some random 3 max charms. Get the idea. Whatever you can afford though, even 2 max charms will do the trick to an extent. Budget build is fun though. Strong. Player count, you're not going to be as effective in high player count in general, but in low player count, it's just fun. And you can especially farm areas like Pendleskin, hit bosses very effectively. Right, so now, remember as I said, you didn't need the torch and the Annie for the budget build to be effective. Now, of course, we can fully say we have these once again. We're another fully built character here. We're gonna do the trick. We're gonna do the trick. Okay, so E on this one. This is not. So now we're gonna want to put these things back on. We're gonna put on the standard charms, the ones I was using for the standard build, because when it comes down to it, it's still the same deal. You still want your attack rating. Everything else is the same as the standard build, which showed in the beginning. Really, the only thing that changes is that we're gonna prioritize attack speed. That means we also need to use Hawes. So we're gonna go over some of the gear differences here in a moment. See, there are some pretty large changes. This is my favorite version of the build though, because he can destroy high player count, Worldstone, and Bale, and you never have to worry about slow down. It's just beautiful, beautiful stuff. Alright, so this is it. Oh, actually no, not quite. Put on the good items again. No. Actually, you know what? That's fine. Now, this version of the build, it's actually easier for us to get attack speed because of Hawes, because we have all these plus skills. Hawes is going to help us out a lot with that. So we don't have to worry about attack speed nearly as much on this version of the build. I don't want to use our good stuff, right? So now we can actually, because I'm not using a Cham G-Face anymore, I can actually put that on my mercenary where it belongs. So the mercenary now has Cham G-Face. Now he can't be frozen, and he has max attack speed for system. So now this mercenary, this is what we wanted to show earlier with the mercenary. This is the ideal. Alright, so now we have 119 attack speed. So at 113 with a Grief Phase Blade and with Fanaticism, we are going to hit a amount of attack speed where if we are decrepified, we are not slowing down at all. We are at max frame. This is that means that it's basically we can ignore Decrepify. We can ignore Holy Freeze and Decrepify separately. Together they will hurt us a little bit, but not as much as they would if we didn't have as much attack speed. So at 113 is the magic number. So you need a Grief with at least 33 attack speed to make this work. Basically, every piece of gear that can have attack speed pretty much does have attack, including the belt. Of course, you can use Gold Wrap again here, once again, if you don't want it, but the Slow's attack is nice, the Strength is nice, the Life Leech is nice. Still going to use Enigma, of course. We have only the Spirit for our teleport speed, though. So our teleport speed is definitely a bit compromised on our offhand with this setup, because we can't afford to get enough attack speed. If I have 2 10 FCR rings, that means we don't have cannot be frozen. We can't put a Cham in here because we actually do need this attack speed. So in this case, we have an attack speed ED helm. Of course, it could be attack speed all res jewel. There's other things you can put in there, but ED is going to be really nice. Enhanced damage, really nice for that. Physical damage. Also have an attack speed ED jewel in the Hawes, and an upped Hawes for more defense as well, and more smite damage if you want as well. This is the miracle build that's going to destroy Worldstone and Chaos for us, so we're going to demo this build exclusively in Player 7 in those areas. So you guys can see just how ridiculous this build can truly get. anyway. Good stuff. Let's get our teleport back on. Budget version anymore. Sweet. Okay. And we actually even have more defense because of the Haas too. So we can even hit higher Holy Shield. Remember, don't worry too much about the life and the exact stats. This is because I'm doing it all in the same character without respecing. Remember to always optimize the amount of strength you have based on highest strength gear requirement gear piece. Dex based on however many points it takes to get max block on your main hand at the very least. And then put the rest of the points in vitality. The rest of the stats, once again, pretty much the same, except your FCR is going to be lower on your offhand where you teleport, and your attack speed is going to be a lot higher. And if you forego War Traps, your MF's going to be low. We're going to have to use Gores for higher deadly strikes. So, in general, though, Charms still just damage, AR, life, res, whatever you kind of want to put in there. Okay. Sweet. Let's do it. And also remember, on all the variants, the skills don't change. Especially on this one where you focus on Chaos and Bale. This build is really good in Bale because of all the Decrepify, especially from Bale himself. Even in like World Stone 3 with the Oblivion Knights, you really want to focus that resist lightning if you can for the souls. So let's get it though. Another feature of this build is that we don't have as much damage reduction, which means we can die. In general, we are very strong. We have the enhanced damage in our jewels, so we're not lacking too much damage compared to the Phoenix version either. And also we don't get interrupted by the fires. So I'll teleport on our swap, but it's going to be a bit slower. You might notice that I'm decrepified right now, right? They can't slow me down. I am... He just decrept me, and I'm still attacking just as fast as I was before. So you see how I'm decrept right now, decrepify? And I'm still attacking at the same attack speed. That is the major feature of this version of the Zealer. So you can go in areas like this. You can just say, screw it, doesn't matter what they do to me. I am still going to be a monster. Just jump in whatever you want. Is this not even his final form? Not exactly. In some sense this is, but you know, there's a final form for different areas, right? Wow. There's always a different final form, right? Final form is PD2. Yeah. We don't have much DR in this version of the build. This is why if we statted optimally, we'd have around 3,000 health. So that'd be a little bit better. But you do gotta be careful, especially in P7. You can get wrecked. But if the mercenary does his job and decrepifies the monsters, it's gonna help us out a lot.
I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken.
But even in high player count chaos, you don't care. He's gonna try to decrep us. He can't stop us. Nothing they can do can stop us on this version of the build. You just jump right in. Just whale, just have it. Go to town. Go to town, man. MBR Roby, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Cult of Xanader to say. They're trying to decrepify me to no avail. That is the beauty of the 113 attack speed setup. Now against Bale, it's going to become insanely obvious just how ridiculous this setup can really be. Do we Zeal him down or smite him down? I guess we'll Zeal him down. Yeah, and high player count, he's a monster like the standard version, but now decrep doesn't affect us. Our damage might be a little bit lower than the standard version, our FCR is lower, and our DR is lower. But now we can't be decrept, and we have other advantages as well. Such as more slows target, and we have some other things going on as well. But in general, the idea is that Hawes is going to want to be used so you can put an attack speed jewel. It's all about that attack speed. Always want all attack speed gear. Alright. So, let's go to another area this build is insanely good at. Oh yeah, cows. Oh man, yeah, a lot of cows. So even if I don't get Oblivion Knights in here, which definitely demo the full power of this build very well. We're gonna see what we can do to Bale and Bale's waves. This character, no joke. So in general, of course, you know, I can kill any elite packs, I can target him if I want, just for magic finding. Nice, so we do have a... Oh, he just decrepified me, and as you can see from the rate of attack, good luck slowing us down. Couldn't even let him decrep me there, he just got stuck. They always decrep you when you try to go for them anyway. We don't have to worry about slowing down, so that's the beauty of all this. And this is going to be insanely effective against Bale, specifically. This is a little dangerous with the dolls. Hopefully we don't die. Alright, so we're gonna keep it on player 7, and all we gotta do is jump in the middle and... Now Bale's always gonna decrepify me if he can. Like right there. And we don't care about Bale's decrepify on this build. He will be doing absolutely nothing to us with his decrepify. Normally this would be really painful once he decreps us, but with cannot be frozen, with 113 attack speed, a wave like wave 2 is nothing. Now the key is you need 113 attack speed plus fanaticism. You really need a ton of attack speed to circumvent this. But it's insanely effective, especially for farming Bale waves and Bale. Reason why this is my favorite setup is because I like to farm World Stone Keep in Bale. And one of the most annoying things is being slowed down as a Zealer, because then you're like, fum, fum, fum. You know, you saw it when I was on the standard build a bit in Chaos. It's painful. It's painful. But now he can decrep us all we want. We don't even have to pull the monsters. See, if you use the other version of the build, the strategy is to pull the monsters like all the way out here. But I don't even have to do that. I don't have to do anything that's even slightly inconvenient, so... What's up, Sci-Fi? Donut time! Now imagine getting decrept by Bale against these dudes. So he's gonna decrep me right now, and normally this would be a problem. but I'm still attacking just as fast as I was before. Even player's 7 minions of destruction go down to a Zealer. Relative ease. Gale maxes out experience-wise in P3. His drop's almost maxed out in P3 as well. At least his drop odds. He almost always drops 6 items anyway, but we're gonna go to him here. Now, Bale's always a little challenging to hit because he's got blocks, but I can kill him with Zeal if I want, like I'm doing now. Or I can switch to Smite, especially once it gets low. And Mercenary will decrep him and keep him in place. That's why you really want to get that Mercenary right on top of him. That's why Telly stomping the monsters is so good. Getting that Decrepify right on top of him there. And bam, he's dead. No problem, right? Alright, well that's it for that variant. A pretty sick variant in general. The next variant I'm going to show off is probably, you know, we can maybe stick to P3, but we're going to be still very powerful, so it's going to be a powerful version of the Zealer. It's actually a very simple, adjustment compared to the normal. So, all it is compared to the standard setup is you chuck on an Arachnid's Mesh. That's it. So we're going to get our 10 FCR rings on again. Where's the other one? That one. There we go. Gonna get Mercenary's gonna have to use an unoptimal helm again, somewhat. It's just so much better if he has the chain rune, honestly. And then we're gonna put the cham on ourselves. Gonna wear Phoenix. And won't you look at that, chat and YouTube? Here you go. 75 cast rate. So we just hit a new breakpoint. This build is especially effective if you want to farm. If you got a full build and you want to farm like Nilfok, things that take teleporting, right? So something you're gonna like teleport straight to. It's gonna be really good on this build. Like, you know, for instance, we'll make a new game. So you can actually get 75 attack speed. Now there's a couple other ways to get 75 attack speed besides just checking on an Arachnid's Mesh. You can also check on a 220 amulet, like a 2 Paladin 20 FCR amulet, but then you lose the Deadly Strike. I would rather just lose DR and just play a bit more dangerously. And then make sure I have the Cham up here. And I have the Phoenix for the maximum ED. And then all I gotta do now is just teleport around and just teleport it 75.
Good morning.
Believe it or not, it is possible to get to 125 FCR on this build using like a 220 circlet and other things, but I don't think it's worth it. You lose too much Deadly Strike. And you lose a lot of damage. But you can also do that if you got some really weak opponents, right? But this is the crux of this build, is this teleport speed right here on their swap. And so we don't have String of Ears anymore, so we're squishier. That's okay. Just teleport straight to the monsters and kill them. We're in players 3 right now, so it's a little bit easier as you can see, but absolutely smashes. Usually when you're teleporting to a boss, you don't really want to kill bosses in P7 anyway, so. Look at that speed, man. Woo! Trucking it. You can switch to Smite if you want. Let's kill him with Smite. Or Zeal, or whatever you want. You don't lose any damage from the normal version of the build, you just lose some survivability. As long as you're using the High Lord's Arachnid's Mesh, double FCR ring, AR FCR ring setup. As long as you have exactly 35 FCR on your spirit. This setup requires that you get 35 FCR on your spirit, so you can't even get a slightly bad roll, you have to get a perfect one. Everything else is the same about this setup, though. Yeah, I wasn't even close. The Poison Necro absolutely wrecked. We got a Vextron from Andy. Pretty nuts. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I recommend like having like Smite on your swap always and Zeal in your main hand, so you know when you're on your swap and when you're not. It's kind of a neat trick. But yeah, Zealer, Zealer Rex for real. Alright, yeah, in general, I think you guys get the idea. Like, you know, you can teleport to the bosses, you can teleport around areas. One area that's really good for this type of build to do is Nilithok because of your teleport speed. Having teleport speed is really nice. Nilithok. Farming some D keys. He farms Nilithok really well, and in general, he's also really good at key farming. You can farm in P3 or P7, but you don't necessarily need super high player count for key farming. P3 is very optimal.
Good afternoon.
Arguably, this version of the build, if you don't care about dying, is even better at Travancore, simply because you can teleport here faster. Saves you a few seconds. Since we're using the Phoenix still. Shit. And smashed. And we can farm the other keys, of course. Yeah, for these kinds of farms, I feel like FCR is really good. But, you know, it's not the jack of all trades. You want to farm Worldstone Keep without, like, with only 8 DR. And, maybe a bit of lack of health, it might not be a good idea. Especially on hardcore, but, you know. You do you. On softcore, though, I mean, these builds are all, you know, built for softcore. We're going to, of course, go over a hardcore specific variant soon here. Right after we're done with the key farm here. Nilithok, yep. He's good at Nilithok, though, especially if you use the Phoenix with the Arachnid's Mesh. Redemption will actually redeem his corpses, which makes him especially good for that farm. Yep. Oh, baby. Yeah. Thought you could only like farm these with a Hammerden. Technically, a Zealer is a lot cleaner to kill them. You might have noticed that, like, if you compared him to the Hammerden, especially in a high player count, he's faster at training down bosses and single targets. So farms where you just literally are just targeting the boss, jumping into the boss and killing it, he's gonna be faster. As opposed to like, but the Hammerden typically is faster for farming an area like the pit, and he's also more efficient because of his area. So if you're looking for efficiency, this character is always going to be good for boss sniping. You can always hit him up. You can just jump in. You don't even have to worry about your positioning like with hammers. And it's always going to be a solid approach. Alright.
Hello.
I can't.
No. Looks like we got some things to ID. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the 75 FCR. Teleporting, key farming. Yeah, he's really good at the key farms. He can farm the areas. He's a boss killer. He does it all, really. But next what we're going to go into, though, is his real boss killing variant. This is when he gets serious about destroying very powerful bosses. So next up is Ubers. Yeah, so we'll be demoing it, of course, against real live Uber bosses. So we go without saying, of course. Alright, so For Ubers in general, I like having as much crushing blow as possible because it's all about chunking their large HP bars while also doing a lot of damage. So, the key for this though is that you don't even necessarily need. You're not necessarily going to need Enigma. Necessarily. I'll say necessarily. Necessarily. Of course, you can also use like a teleport amulet that has some FCR in it, some Paladin skills, or you can just use a plain one. Doesn't matter. I like Fortitude a lot because it has all resistances and life and things like that. So those are just really good stats in general. Really good stuff. Really good stuff. And of course, Gore Riders are going to be really solid. Something else that's going to be really solid here is Vertigos. Quite honestly, you really want damage reduction. Having 0 damage reduction against the standard Ubers is kind of going to hurt. Matter of fact, if you can afford to do it, I would even try to put on, what should I call it? I'd even try to put on like a bird G face instead of a Chan one, and then use like a Ravenfrost instead. That's not a bad approach for this. It's not a bad approach at all. Of course, you can use slightly different rings as well to focus on your attack rating. But yeah, if you put like a burr in here, you actually get some decent D2R. You can use Chains of Honor as well if you want to maintain more damage reduction while doing a little bit less damage. I like Fort though because it's also good against Mephisto for that maximum life. There's definitely some other choices that are going to be used here though. This can be used here. Exile is just amazing for life tap. You're really going to want life tap. You really want to heal as much as possible up against an Uber boss. They do a ton of damage. It's gonna hurt a lot, so I definitely recommend being able to instantly refill your health, not just with some life leech, but to have life tap somewhere. If you don't have any source of life tap, like from Exile or a pair of Drax or something, or from both, recommend using a life tap wand. So you can buy a life tap charge wand and then swap to it, life tap, then swap back, and kill a mass. So, but what we're gonna do though, for this version of the build, is we're gonna swap out these charms here. Actually going to, so you can also use like crushing blow gloves, like crafted gloves if you wanted to in this case, but these do increase damage to demons. The Ubers are also demons, so it's not going to hurt too bad. We're not going to use smite at all. You could use your 1-point smite to kill the Ubers, but that's no fun, right? I mean, if you got a Zealer that's this strong, why not kill him with Zeal? It's no problem, right? Right? Right, that's what I think. I'm actually going to have to respec, though. It appears like, yes, we don't have enough, well... Can I get strength from places? I probably could. Let's see if I can somehow scrounge up strength. And yeah, it's not gonna. It's not gonna happen. Of course, I could just use Enigma. See, one thing I could do is even though like Fortitude is just fine, for the purposes of just demoing, so I guess I could use it. You can use Enigma against them, it doesn't matter. So one thing to note is that if you want to do more damage, you can use something like Fortitude or Chains of Honor, especially for the res, but you don't have to. You could actually just stack more res down here to compensate for the lack of res, and then you can use Enigma. Definitely choices, right? Enigma also gives you more damage reduction. So you know what? Why not? Why don't we just do this? Why don't? Even though I'd love to demo with Fort, and Fort's a really strong option. It's something we mentioned, and so is Chains of Honor. Let's demo it with Enigma to get some extra DR. And of course, to have that strength on hand. And let's just use the normal teleport. And then we can have the deadly strike as well. But this is one thing to note, though, is you definitely don't need Enigma for this. There's definitely other options. You can use Lionheart even. You can use really cheap stuff. You can use Lionheart, Durus. Durus is really good. You can use Stone. Definitely don't need Enigma. You can use the teleport amulet like I showed earlier. This one from the budget build. You really don't have to. But we're gonna go fun. We're gonna go fun setup. Let's just make it easy for ourselves. You can make it harder, but these GCs that have like lead, res, and light. And one thing that's interesting to note is that if we have 12 FHR in our charms, actually if we only have 8 more FHR in our charms, plus the 10 here and the 30 here from Dunkos, we can actually hit a new FHR breakpoint. So we can hit 48. That's going to be kind of nice against really strong monsters in these areas. We're actually going to do that. You don't need Geeds because we're not magic finding when we kill Ubers. It's not important. Let's see. Nullify, no. By the way, chat, remember, this is a guide, so feel free to ask questions during the guide, just like normal. And always talk about alternative setups. There's always, within the setups, there's other setups, right? You know, there's always more options. Exile's just amazing, though. Defense. The defense is just huge. The life tap, Defiance. We're going to have a crap ton of defense and freeze his target. Hopefully you guys get to see just how ridiculously effective this can be. Oh yeah, look at that light res. Woo! Man, oh man. Now one thing we're going to want to keep close to ourselves here is this. And because we put all those points into max light res for killing Worldstone, we don't really have to use this too often. But against Uber Mephisto, you're definitely going to want that lightning sword, so we're going to want to keep this handy at the very least. Definitely going to want to keep that on hand. It's going to be nice. Another thing we're going to want to keep on hand is... where is it? This is not here. There it is, Treachery. Okay. Yeah, so there's some pre-buffs we can do, and there's some gear swap outs. We'll explain why we do that in a moment. One thing to note against Ubers is you could actually justify going Goblin Toes even if you want here. I like the Deadly Strike because we're still doing a ton of damage with Grief to finish him off. But if you want to increase your Crushing Blow, Goblin Toes is going to be nice. And if you want to, you know, be even safer, you can use Crown of Ages, but then you don't have DR. One thing to note is that you could even use something as expensive as this against Ubers. This is something we might demo, actually. But I might swap this out, actually, with the Grief just to show you guys. So I can get my Crushing Blow up to 100% with Last Wish. And so every hit's a Crushing Blow. And then we can also have even more Life Tap, and then we can just get Faded automatically. We don't have to worry about pre-buffing Fade with Treachery, which is going to give us a lot of DR, Curse reduction, and resistances. It also, of course, says Prevent Monster Heal, and in general, it's just a really strong item. Smiters never have to worry about doing Ubers if you own this. This is the most expensive Rim Word in the game. Definitely don't need this, but this is definitely something you can use for this. It's pretty effective against Uber bosses because of their health pool. Getting that Crushing Blow really high can sometimes be better than just using a high damage weapon. Brief. We don't necessarily need it, so. Bear! You despise Hammerden. Oh, so sad. So sad. You despise the Hammerden. Sorry, man. I'm sorry for you. Miss out so much on life. Despise the Hammerden. I like the Hammerden. But you know, the Zealer in some ways is more fun than the Hammerden. You don't have to worry about anything. You just jump in and you just smash things. Almost nothing quite like, you know, just like jumping into monsters and just shredding them to bits, you know. It's like, yeah. Nothing you can really say about it. It's just crazy damage. Crazy damages. Right, I don't know quite how high our res is necessarily in this scenario. It's pretty good though. We have a teleport speed. Okay, so in general, yeah, we just have higher damage reduction. We have really high defense. We have Crushing Blow. We have a lot more res. So One thing to note here is that it's actually really important that our res really high, if possible. Especially for Mephisto. Hey, thank you for the tab, man. I appreciate it. That light res is going to be really important against Mephisto specifically. So, of course, you can even use like a Wizard Spike for smiting, but we're not smiting. We gotta smash them with Zeal here. Got a Zealer too. So, let's see. Let's just get like tons of light. So we're gonna need this light res in a second here, so that we gotta stack our light res insanely high. Now we could also use conviction just to cancel his aura out, but we're not gonna do that. Okay. I think we have the general idea. Alright, so this is a Uber Zealer. Okay, so Uber Zealer, main tenets are Crushing Blow, where you can get it. Deadly Strike. Grief is still insane. It's insane in all scenarios. You can use Last Wish, though, for that Crushing Blow boost, as I just showed. Of course, you also have Enigma, but you can use any kind of teleport staff or amulet. It just might be a little jankier and a bit more dangerous, but you can use those, especially along with like Fortitude or Chains of Honor, to boost your res in easier ways. Of course, you can also use Smoke just for some res, or Lionheart for res and damage, and Durus. So many good options in your armor. You can charge around like we showed you guys earlier with the budget build, so you already kind of saw that gameplay style. It's definitely be a little tougher though. We're gonna have a lot of FCR though still, so we're gonna have 48 FCR so that we can teleport through these areas quickly and destroy them. Of course, since we're doing Ubers, we don't need to do higher than players 1 because they'll drop a torch and organs no matter what. Yeah, doesn't matter what the player can is. We don't want to make it harder for ourselves. It has to be for killing Ubers unless we want to. Zealer can destroy Ubers in like player 7, but it takes a bit longer. We might actually demo that for one of them, but it's maybe not. Maybe we'll just kill him do the normal way. Okay. What's up, Isabel? How you doing? Evening, Nellis. What's up, guys? Doing a Zealer guide. If you guys missed it, exclamation USA 16. We found a unique sacred armor, 4th of July, and let me tell you, once again, instead of red, white, and blue, it was red, white, and green. Once again, check that one out. It's painful stuff. Oof. Okay. Anyway, you don't have to worry about your mercenary, by the way, ever. This is something I should emphasize. Once again, we don't have to worry about our mercenary. It's not important. We don't have to. Really don't have to. Now, one thing we could do is swap out for Ravenfrost to increase our AR. Really could be very useful in this case. We don't necessarily have to do that. In order to make it easier for me to kill them, though, I might do that. And forego some FCR. Yeah, like FCR isn't super important for teleporting. The main thing is that you can kill the Uber bosses, so don't worry about the FCR. I might actually just do this to give myself more attack damage. If you put a Burr here instead of a Cham and then use like a Ravenfrost, you can forego the FCR and just use the 32 frame. Be just fine there as well. Exiles just get that in that real bugged base and you just have a billion defense. The thing you'll notice here is my defense is like sky high. My res is sky high. Even my life is sky high, even though my stats are inoptimal. It's pretty good stuff. Okay. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go kill some Ubers. Obviously. That's the point. See if it works, right? Maybe? I mean, it doesn't matter that much. I did. Well, mostly. Oh yeah, amazing gear. Hey, thank you. We did a battle of the pit yesterday where we found a lot of amazing stuff. A lot of those commands are in the stream type. Found all the runes doing all kinds of runs on the solo self-found project we have here, the Grail. It's been good stuff in general. Alright, so what we're gonna want to do though, one thing that's really smart here is You don't need as much light res, by the way, and you don't need as much res in general against Mephisto as long as you fade yourself. The key is making sure you can get that res with treachery. So this is a swap out. So what we're going to want to do is some pre-buffs. So I'm going to put on Demon Limb. We're going to do the enchant thing again. Demon Limb. We have 10,000 AR. That's decent. It could definitely be higher. We could prioritize maybe some AR charms, especially if we don't want the stacked res right away. The stacked res is mostly important for Mephisto, for his conviction. Besides that, we don't need res this stacked, so for most monsters, we can put on more AR damage charms if we want. But just to make it faster for demo purposes, I'm going to leave these charms. And you can also put like more like AR damage, AR life charms as well. But AR damage, life charms, just whatever you want. Charms like this, for instance, are especially nice potentially for this purpose, but I'm not going to use them for the purpose of this demo. So this is Matron's Den. Matron's Den is, of course, the most dangerous one. This is, so. Let's go looking for Lilith. This area is insanely dangerous just in general. But if you have some source of teleport, you can just dart around. If you have charge, you can use charge. We're just going to teleport. Yeah, you can see we can destroy this area. It's no problem, but we have really good gear. Even without that, though, it's fine. Don't worry about the mercenary. He's probably going to die. Unless you position him perfectly. Oh, nice. Pit runs are incredible as well. Like, the things I find in pit runs is just... There you go, Diablo's horn. What do you know? Let's see, she got smashed. Absolutely wrecked. And notice I didn't have to use Last Wish or anything. So you don't need 100% crushing blow. The key is that you just have a lot of crushing. I like having like 50% or higher. Stacked res are for Mephisto, of course, and the DR in general is for killing like most of these areas and the bosses. You don't need a ton of FCR, but having some form of teleport or repositioning is definitely going to be helpful, like a charges from something. It'd be very nice in general. Okay, so yeah, so Lilith got absolutely destroyed. And let's go kill another set here. Let's go kill the other ones. What we're gonna do now, let's go kill this one's fun. We can also switch to Last Wish if you guys want to see that, which is kind of interesting. One thing we can also do is pre-buff even before these Ubers if we want more damage reduction using Treachery. But we're only going to do it for the big Ubers just to show you guys, because it's mostly essential for stacking against that Mephisto Conviction Aura. But on Hardcore, having that curse reduction and that damage reduction is even more important. We're going to show you guys how to pre-buff with this pretty shortly, though, in a moment. Against this boss, though, I'm going to go use Last Wish just for fun. It is the shit, yeah. Normally he's right next to the waypoint, but this time he's not. Interesting. Usually right next to the red portal. Dang it. Or not the waypoint, sorry, the red portal. Since this is pluggy, we're not going to have the minions actually, because I haven't updated my pluggy for that. The minions for the final Ubers, but you'll get the idea. Wow, this is actually kind of bad. Got like a... We don't need the mercenary at all. You know, mercenary can stay dead if he wants to. It would help us in this scenario with the Decrepify to kill that one beetle, but that's okay. Only problem with Last Wish though is we're not doing as much damage as Grief, so like killing these other monsters that surround him is a bit more of a chore like this. Remember to have one source of prevent monster heal or open wounds against Ubers in addition to the crushing blow, so that they bleed and they don't heal. You don't want them to heal. Healing is bad. Healing means that you can't kill them. You'll get them low, and then all of a sudden you won't be able to kill them because you're relying more on your base damage rather than your crushing blow. It's gonna be really hard to kill. Notice that I'm faded now. That's a benefit of Last Wish, is that you can get that DR and res. Yeah, look at my res stacks now. This damage reduction is crazy too. You can also notice that I have 34% DR right now, even though I only have 23 on my gear. That's all fade. He's healing because I can't kill him because of this beetle next to me. That's physical immune. Oh wow. Let's move him. That's annoying. But yeah, one of the weaknesses of Last Wish is what you can kind of see right here. Of course, if you really get annoyed, you can just switch to Smite and just kill him this way. This is why Smite is so good against super bosses, but like... Last Wish doesn't do any damage! It's all crushing blow! Okay, that's fine. We killed him. Alright, that's annoying.
Yes, warrior.
This is why I like using Grief even against Ubers.
How may I be of help?
Because of that. That problem is a problem. Grief just has so much damage, man. Hard to avoid. Okay, anyway. Last Wish is just kind of fun. Well, we'll put the Grief back on. It's fun. It fades you too, so, you know. Now I have more DR and whatnot. So it's an even safer option, but it's so absurdly expensive, you really don't worry about it. So you absolutely want to. It's fun for sure, but... that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's go up against Izual now. Make sure we re-bow, make sure our battle order stays up. Why are you reeing? Is there any particular reason? Alright, Izual's gonna get smashed. Yeah, Zealer is insanely good at killing Ubers. Of course, you can even use that 1 point Smite because Smite is that broken. You just need 1 point into it in Fanaticism, and then Crushing Blow, and then Smite will kill them. So the Zealer can do it all. Zealer has that Smite available. Zealer has Zeal available. Zeal also is being on a Zealer in some ways is even better than making a pure Smiter for Ubers because the Zeal damage is also insanely high. Because you have all your points into Zeal. So that means that if there's ever monsters surrounding you, as long as they're not physical immune, like around Duriel, you can destroy them. One weakness of just a Smiter is that it's hard to clear out some of the other enemies sometimes, especially if you're using like a weapon that's worse than a Grief. If you have a Grief with 1 point Zeal, you're also doing decent damage, but it's kind of hard to say, but like a pure Zealer is like definitely a really solid approach to no matter what, even if you're using just Smite to take down the Uber bosses themselves and then Zeal for the monsters surrounding them. That also goes for the minions surrounding the Ubers in the final Uber area as well, such as Uber Diablo, Uber Bale, and Uber Tristram, which is where we're about to open up with these organs. Make sure to pick up the organs. One of each key opens up these portals. D, T, and H keys. We showed you guys how to farm those key bosses earlier. Can be done pretty well with this character as well. And then open up Uber Tristram. Now for Uber Tristram, we're only going to have the bosses in there. We're not going to have the minions. You are going to have to fight the minions. This is why Zeal can be very useful in here, especially to take them out quickly so that to reduce the amount of damage done to you. But Smite's just going to be insanely good overall as well. What we're going to try to do though, I'm going to show you guys all the pre-buffs. We're going to just use Zeal. We're going to just use Zeal. And obviously this is an easier scenario than it will be normally. But we are faded right now because of Last Wish. Let's kind of show you guys how to fade though with the treachery. So one thing to note here is we're already faded, but you want to fade. You're not faded. You're gonna take this treachery here. If you don't have a Last Wish, this is the way to do it for sure. But yeah, we're not faded now. So now we can show you guys. You have a 5% chance to cast level 15 Fade when struck with this as well. Last Wish is easier because you can do it while you're killing stuff, but with this, you can just sit in this fire here. Fire will eventually proc that Fade. And it's going to give you that damage reduction. It's going to give you a huge amount of resistances, which we're going to want. So, it does also give Smite damage Vibrant. It does. This is why Grief is so good, because it also helps with the Smite as well. So it helps finishing off monsters with Smite. One thing to note about Crushing Blow is it only chunks them based on the remaining health. So once their health bar is low, you have to have some strong damage, some strong flat damage to finish them off. Now so that's why Grief is so good, because it has such amazing flat damage for both Smite and Zeal. Alright, so we just faded. The reason we know we faded is we see these blue res numbers here. Okay, so that means that we're faded. You can also see our body, we're faded. Alright, so that's the key there. You're usually going to want to fade before you kill them so that Uber Mephisto can't just insta-kill you. That's what I like to do at least. The other good thing we're going to want to use is Thunder Gods. So this is going to give us a ton of light res. You might notice now we have 90 light res. You don't need 90 necessarily. You could even get 95 if you wear Fort though, if you're doing this at Fortitude. But you don't need that. The reason why my light res is so high though is because I put extra points into Resist Lightning. Remember, every 2 points into this gives you an extra as well. So it's, once again, this is a very effective strategy for everything, including Worldstone farming, but it also is going to work very well against Ubers. Okay. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to go kill Uber Mephisto. Now, killing Uber Mephisto is going to be super, super easy.
Hello.
No wonder why you nerfed Grief. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But then again, in vanilla though, if you didn't have Grief, melee characters would have been garbage. So all the other options are decent, right? But they're not nearly as strong as Grief. Imagine if Grief didn't exist in vanilla. If Grief doesn't exist in vanilla, all of a sudden melee characters are already handicapped in some ways, especially compared to like casters, like sorceresses. Now imagine how handicapped they are if they don't have. Definitely a reason why it exists in vanilla at least, but like if you have better options or other options, single target, yeah. So look at these stats. Like this is what we really want here. Is this we want our lightning res to be at least at 300 and yeah, I guess we want it to be at least at 300, but ideally actually 315 because we have 90 light res. So we want to make it to where when he procs his conviction on us, we don't lose it. His conviction reduces our resistances, or light, cold, and fire by 125. That's a lot. Lightning is the most important one against him though, because his lightning attacks are very scary. Especially his charge strike. If he does charge strike, oh man, he can one-shot you easily. So this is why we're wearing T-Gods. We want that lightning sword, and we want that stacked light res. Definitely want our res stacked in general, but the lightning res especially. Alright. So, our damage reduction. So I'm gonna use Enigma. I don't recommend really using Enigma in this scenario, but right now I don't feel like respecking, so we're gonna use it. Using Chains of Honor is a much cheaper scenario instead of getting all these crazy charms, for instance. Just remember what I said earlier about like some other options for killing Ubers, and you'll be okay. We pre-buffed our AR2, so we have 11,000 AR for Zeal, which is okay.
I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken
All right, this is Mephisto, so we don't care about the mercenary. So we're gonna go pull out Mephisto if we can. Actually, you know what? We can just wail on all of them. So you notice that Mephisto just dropped our lightning res to 213. That's why we need all that lightning res. Because at 175, we only have 75 light res. And with, of course, we don't even have max cold and fire res in this. That's how much damage it is. So when he has his skeleton mages surrounding him, it gets even nastier. But notice how fast we killed him there. He got absolutely wrecked. We still got our crushing blow. You could be even tankier with a burr in your G phase, but that's definitely an expensive option. Very expensive option. We got the life tap from Exile. Remember, there's other ways to get life tap as well. Gonna keep you alive. Yeah, we're just wrecking them. They can't do nothing. Our gear is too good, but like you don't need gear half as good as this, but you can see like, you know, this character is insanely good at killing Uber bosses. Just to show you guys smite real quick. Notice that I just have 1 point smite. This is 1 point smite, that's all it is. And it still works at them. But you can chunk them really hard with grief with this, so it's pretty good indeed. As you can see, there they are, they're dead. That's it. That's it. That's Uber Tristram, and that's what you're looking for, the Hellfire Torch. We're gonna go ID that Hellfire Torch. Chat, if you want, you can guess on the Hellfire Torch.
Afternoon.
Guess the torch, guys! Any of the 7 classes, 10 to 20 stats, 10 to 20 res. Any of the 7 classes, go. We're gonna go ID the torch as well. Standard of Heroes doesn't do anything in the standard game. Who knows? In D2R, they actually might make that a useful item. I don't know. Maybe that's what's going to spawn Diablo Club. You have to figure that out after. So, what's up, Empty the Crypts? How you doing? What's up, Hyper Midget? So, Zealer is one of the strongest builds, period, because you have the strongest attack, which is Smite against Uber bosses, and you have Zeal on top of that. This is going to be one of your best options on LOD and even on mods like Project Diablo 2, which some people. Zealer is just amazing. So, if you ever want to build a Zealer, just know that you're going to have a really fun time with this. No problem. Easy stuff. I noticed that I didn't even swap back to my Dungos, but I could have. T-God is mainly just for Mephisto, so after you kill Mephisto, you could just swap back if you want as well. Just give yourself more damage reduction and more HP. Of course, you can just use this and then use the strength to wear your gear, which can also be nice as well. So I don't like using this for like areas like Lilith though, because there's monsters that do a ton of physical damage. I really want to make sure I have Dungos, especially for like so. You gotta be very careful against that. Okay. And wow, what do you know? Wow. That's very similar, isn't it? It's like I could have you know. Huh. Well, alright then. We found the torch we were already wearing. That's very very interesting. Except for like a couple stats. 1716 Paladin. Anyone even guess close? Actually, I guess too cool for a name. Or yeah, I guess really close on the stats, but not the class. Huh. Well, what do you know? Well, there you go. 1716 Paladin torch. Debatably, it could be better depending on your res situation, right? That's actually kind of nice. Sweet. Pretty sweet torch there. Paladin torch is usually one of the better classes, and it's high stats, high res. Very nice, and it's almost identical to what we were wearing. I have a perfect Paladin torch actually on my hardcore, but I don't have it, so can't show you guys that one. Yeah, there's the Ubers for you. You can see Zealer is insanely strong, and if you stack your Riz against Mephisto, you stack your DR for everything else. You pre-buff Fade, you pre-buff Demon Limb, you get the
I can
Crushing
already
Blow,
tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken camp.
and you get your life up, and you get your make sure AR is at least decent as well. Definitely want your AR to at least be north of 10,000 with Demon Limb. Below that, it starts to get kind of hard to hit these bosses because they're pretty. Oh, 7i, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Club, Andrew. So remember to not care about your mercenary. He's probably going to die anyway, so you saw him die multiple times there. It doesn't really matter too much against him. Alright, nifty. Alright, so, and now we have one final setup for you guys, which is the hardcore setup.
Can't use this yet.
So, hardcore. Hardcore is all about getting DR. So you can focus DR very hard on this, but in general, like, you can get less DR, you can get more DR, but if you don't have burr runes or if you're lacking them, you can put a burr rune here, for instance, but you can also put an attack speed ED jewel. You could even use Phoenix if you want on here. We're going to use Hawes because it makes this really tanky. If you have a burr rune, of course, in here, you could even put all these burr runes in the Crown of Ages. You can even put on like an item like Dragon's Mesh. You can definitely change out some of the gear options. But what we're going to do mainly for this option, we're going to do, you can even put like Cham and burr in here and then put a burr rune in here. You still have your max there. Cham would, of course, give you your cannot be frozen without Raven Frost. But what we're going to do, we're going to go Raven Frost, Double Burr. Definitely a lot of options, though. Like I said, I mentioned probably one of the more prominent ones, which is Chamber, Burr here. Get your String of Ears or use Dungos. I'm actually going to use Dungos because I want more life. It's really important to have that life really high, so we're going to use a ton of damage reduction. Crown of Ages is incredible for hardcore. You're not going to have the Deadly Strike you'd have on the normal version of the build, but that's okay. Your Deadly Strike will still be decent. Definitely can be decent for sure. Another thing to note is that we can even put on Gore Riders still for more Deadly Strikes, so we can just make ourselves insanely tanky and powerful. That's what we're going to do. We're going to use a dual E-Train with no FCR. We're not going to prioritize FCR a ton. And we're just going to become insanely tanky. In general, you can use more tanky small turns. You can still use MF. It's all about balancing it, right? Making sure you have a strong balance. Since my res is really ridiculous on this version of the build, though, I don't need nearly as much res as I was using against Ubers, like Uber Mephisto. So we can go use some like max damage charms. Max damage AR life charms. Those are really nice. And we can even, like, you know, switch back to some of the MF charms we were using earlier. Right here. Res. You never need to stack res too much, but stacking res in hardcore is also good for other reasons. We'll talk about that, though, in case you don't already know. Crown in PD2. Hell yeah, let's go. Yeah, so we can use the Cham G-Face once again. So the setup for the Mercenary pretty much never changes. You don't really have to bother with it. This is the most optimal setup you're usually going to get on a Zealer Mercenary because you have Fanaticism. You don't need a lot of attack speed, even to proc that Decrepify and the Reaper's Toll. Normally, you actually want a lot of attack speed Reaper's Toll to maximize those procs of Decrepify, but Fanaticism is basically cheating. You don't have to worry about that at all. Basically cheating. Basically. But yeah, we're actually going to demo this hardcore character on a softcore. It's kind of intuitive, but we're just going to kind of show you kind of the difference here. We're going to make ourselves as tanky as possible. Make it to where, you know, dying is very hard. And Zealers become very good in hardcore once you have that stacked res. The rest of it is pretty much the same, right? You know, you still have your teleport. One advantage, of course, to having your DR down here is that we're just focusing more of it down here. Is that instead of on the Haws, that when you swap to your spirit for teleporting, you don't lose any damage reduction. That is one reason, though, why we probably should use War Traps, though, at least for this demo. I'd like the Deadly Strike on this, but I'm going to use War Traps just so that I can wear this and swap. Because we're going to be teleporting and swap. You don't want to lose that res in that FHR DR in general. Another thing we might notice here is that we have like a lot of FHR as well. We can still hit that 48 breakpoint. Let's use... That's really, really high. You don't need it. Okay, so we're going to hit 50 FHR again, but we're actually going to use max damage AR and AR FHR small terms. Good for that purpose. And our light res isn't nearly as stacked as you want it. Sacrifice some fire. It doesn't really. Fire res is gone. Yeah, I think I was still faded out. Okay, cool. So we have pretty stacked res. We could have it more stacked for conviction souls if we want. But this version of the build basically does all the normal farming of the standard build. But now we're just really... That's how hardcore works, basically. That's the whole goal. You're just trying to become insanely tanky. I guess 72 poison res is fine, doesn't really matter. But in general, you just want to stack your fire, cold, and the rest of the stats are pretty much the same. We have a ton of defense though because we were using Haws and Crown of Ages. We have a ton of DR, hitting 54%. The cap is 50% when you're not amped. So we are extremely tanky. Remember, you can put a Baroon, of course, here instead. Crown of Ages with 2 Baroons in it is like insane though. Or Cham and Burr, and you put a Burr in here instead of an ED jewel. You're just balling. You're just balling. We have a lot of life and res, but you can use some F and res, some FAR. You can just kind of use whatever charms you want. We're not using a very high attack speed frame. One thing to note is if you use Cham and Burr, you can actually still put 2 10 FCR rings here. You can maintain your damage reduction. And then you can have 48 FCR on swap as well. Since we're not using a chambered chamber Koa. That's what I like to call it, chamber Koa. Chamber's OP, so. But in general, this build is insanely tanky, so we can show them in player 7 like World Stone. Oh wow. Woo! Woo! Alright, well, one thing to note about hardcore is if you're playing hardcore and you're up against souls, is you want to use Thunder Goats. There was too many souls there. Normally, with just 90 light res, like notice how I have, oh no wait, not 90. Notice how I have 80 light res here. 80 light res is decent against souls, but souls will still kill you without Sorb. This is why in hardcore you always switch to T-Gods on almost any character. Wiz Projector is okay, but T-Gods is even better when you're up against souls and Willstone Q. So that's a good example actually of something not to do, to just jump into souls with T-Gods. It's good to have examples of things not to do, you know? Zab, yeah. Now look, we're a lot more tanky, right? But the mercenary's dead, so we don't do any damage. We're gonna get some pots. Just hold your horses. Okay. Forgot the mercenary. It's okay. We'll get the mercenary. I forgot he died. Mercenary is maybe gonna struggle with this. That's a pretty gnarly scenario there. But in general, though, the rest of the build's the same. You really don't want to put extra points into strength. You want to prioritize vitality always in hardcore, and the skill setup is the same as well. So, alright, here we go. Look how tanky we are, though. This is what we want. So now we're playing hardcore correctly. And when we see souls in Worldstone Cave, the second we see them, even before teleporting to the entrance, we put on our Thunder Gods, and then we don't die. Yay! Right. One thing to note though is we are sacrificing some damage reduction, so our DR is only 39% right now. It's still pretty high, especially with max block and all that defense and whatnot. But still, so notice how ridiculous of a scenario that is though, and I'm not really breaking much of a sweat though. It's the mercenary that's dying, not me. Mercenary even has fortitude and is still dying. One thing you can actually do is instead of Cham in your mercenary, you can actually put a low rune LO, and then you can increase his lightning res even more for those scenarios. But yeah, you can increase his light res even. Alright, so we're out of the soul area, so we put back on our dungos, and now we're just insanely tanky. Notice that we're still doing a ton of damage in P7. This is player 7, so this is a full game. It's been P7, even with the souls, too. He's insanely tanky. His setup's gonna be really good. You're just gonna die. You're gonna die no matter what. Rip 7 Jews, yeah. I had to pop some Jews, man. Yeah, sometimes you need Jews, you know, that's okay. This build has so much life leech, though, typically, you don't actually need them. I don't have that much life leech on this version of the build. I only have one source of life leech. Remember to have at least some source of life leech or life replenish. Actually, just life leech. Even with Phoenix, you want life leech because you don't always kill that fast. But yeah, in general, now we're alright. So once again, if you see souls, what do? We swap to that. Yeah, this is pretty good. And one thing to notice, if you don't have Crown of Ages in hardcore, once again, like I said with the budget build, you can use Vampire Gaze, Shaco even. You could use Rockstopper. There's budget options for hardcore too. We're not going to go too much into depth on that, but you know, you kind of get the idea, right? You know, there's String of Ears. Just make sure you have a lot of DR in general. DR and stacked res in hardcore will save your life. Since you have defense and max block already. See, we're not on our 113 attack speed build, so he's slowing us down with the Decrepify. At least a little bit. But, you know, it's not too big of a deal. On hardcore, it's more important to be safe than to essentially be at maximum efficiency. Man, that's crazy though. That soul pile was insane. Okay. Well, that's normal though. You're gonna see that a lot in Worldstone Cave. Yeah, you can see we don't take like any damage now. I mean, I'll do some more demos to kind of show how tanky this thing is. Once you get that high DR, like you ballin'. We have all this damage too. It's not much of an issue though. GG, next game. Yep. Yeah. That decrep slowdown is pretty significant. You guys remember the 113 attack speed build? That one's really squishy, so it's not very good for hardcore. But if you guys remember that build, I mean, yeah, that one only has 8% of DR, but that build didn't get slowed down by the Decrepify though. But, you know, since we have so much DR now, we don't really care too much. We can still do P7. We're just relying on our DR, and we don't take that much damage anymore. Oh no! Okay, he's physical immune. So there's some physical immunes you can break with Decrepify, but they still have like 99% resistance. Which means you can barely do any damage to them.
Tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken camp.
Now, I can show you guys how tanky this build is. Like, check this out. These dudes, they hit really hard. Hey, look, the mercenary's killing him. So, this is why, you know, with a hardcore Zealer, you really want that damage reduction. That's a good illustration there. Those are Deathlords in Player 7, Champion Deathlords too. Now, I wasn't amped to be fair, but if you're amplified, you lose your damage reduction. But I still have a pretty decent amount even if I get amplified. So, one thing to note there is that, you don't really have to worry about dying too much under those circumstances. It's pretty good. Crown of Ages is a miracle worker, of course, but we did talk about other options. And putting Brr Runes in places is definitely nice. Remember that Shaft Stop even on the cheapo version of the Zealer? Well, even that works on hardcore, so it's all about surviving. Having the low DR Zealer builds, like some of the ones I showed off earlier, like especially the 113 attack speed, probably not a good option for hardcore, and you're going to take a lot of damage sometimes. And sometimes you jump into some really nasty stuff. And you're going to want to not get just popped, basically. Right. Bam. Easy mode. Alright. Let's see if we can show off a couple more things in high player count. High player count's really good to show hardcore in, just to show just like how tanky he is and how, even if you're playing in a full game of people. Alright, I'm not wearing my T-Gods right now, which is bad. It's even got beetles too. T-Gods is definitely nice, gonna be nice in here. At lightning absorb though. Just punch it in the face. Always. Notice though with 80 light res though, like they're not doing that much damage. It takes a lot of souls to kill me. But like, on hardcore you don't want to chance it. Like, I had 80 light res normally for my resist lightning passively, right? Even on the softcore builds. And that's nice and all, but hardcore you just can't chance it with the souls. Sometimes there's tons of them, like you saw right there. And if your light res doesn't stack to like 250, right now it's what, 234? Conviction souls can just vaporize you, so you gotta be very careful. Try to get that T-Gods up, man. See, I'm amped, but I'm not too concerned. General, I'm pretty tanky. You notice that I can take a lot of hits. I wanted to kill my mercenary on purpose there, actually, just to show you guys, like, you know, how many hits I can take there. And I was amped too.
Yes.
Just having that DR just makes such a big difference. And that wasn't life leeching or anything, so like the great thing about a Zealer is normally you can just jump into a pack, life leech, and forget about it. But yeah, that's always good though to have that backup, right? So yeah, while G face is better for damage, like you don't necessarily need it. Notice we could be doing more damage even slightly. We don't even have Core Riders, but War Tribes are strong too. And we're getting some decent MF. Notice that we're hitting over 200 still even on Hardcore, which is really nice on a Zealer. And we still have all this life as well. We don't necessarily even need this much life. We could even like stack more MF if we do. So it's all up to your risk tolerance and you want to farm in general. Become a mercenary on purpose. Yep, psychopath confirmed. Yep, that's... This is why we have chat, guys. Absolutely. What's up, Gento? How you doing? Yeah, so... In general, GG. There you go. I think you guys kind of get the idea. Let me think for a moment. Did we show off all of his strong farming areas, at least at some point? I think we did. We even showed the key farms. Yeah, by the way, Hardcore and Travancore is really safe with Crown of Ages. Like, it's really easy in general. So chat, I would like to ask you guys now if you have any more questions. We are done with the general knowledge portion of the guide. Hope you guys learned a lot of things today about the Zealer. Does anyone have any questions about any of the setups we went over today, or any of his farming areas, any of his strengths? He farms elite packs. He's really good at jumping and targeting the elite packs. He's really good at killing bosses, and he's really good at killing Ubers. Pretty much everything in the game, really. Key farming. He can do it all. He doesn't teleport as fast as some builds, which means that he's never going to be at like max efficiency for key farming necessarily. A pure smiter is usually going to kill Ubers faster, but then again, there is an advantage to Zeal in terms of killing the surrounding enemies. So that's one thing on the Ubers. Even for boss killing, you know, there's other things that can kill bosses faster in some cases, even though it kills them very fast and reliably. And, you know, there are things that are even tankier in some regards as well, less dangerous. Especially with cheaper gear, you saw it was pretty dangerous looking, especially on the budget version. It definitely gets a little dangerous, especially if you don't have like shaft stop and you don't, or vampire gaze, something to give you some DR. It can be dangerous, especially when you don't have like CTA. And you know, it's a sick build overall. Does hardcore well, softcore well. It does it all. It's really fun. Honestly, this is one of my most favorite, one of my favorite builds. Honestly, is a Zealer of some kind, like Paladin, Zealer. I really like these kinds of builds where you just jump in, and just kill shit. You don't really have to think about it too much. I do like the builds where you have to like rotate through lots of skills as well, but I'm like, who doesn't like Zeal? I mean, Zeal is such a satisfying skill. You just hear the weapon sound, smack those monsters, just whack them to death. And they, with a really good cure, you're going to be doing tons and tons of damage for any circumstance. What about using Angelics? So that's definitely an option. You can definitely use Angelics, especially if you're lacking attack rating. However, Angelics isn't going to be as high of your, isn't going to be as good of a damage option, but you can use Angelics. He's talking about using. So Angelics is, I'd say, even better if you're lacking. Let's say you have no AR charms at all. If you want to make it even more budget, that's actually a great idea. There's one thing you can do. This is a question from the chat here, so we have a question. Questions. This is why we field questions, because that usually has some good ideas. So one thing to note here is Angelic set is like really, really good. Let's see if I can go get my Angelic set real quick. Yeah, so Angelics is really, really nice. Like you can just use one ring and one amulet, and my attack rating is all of a sudden like way higher. It's crazy. If you need attack rating, this is the way to do it for sure. It's just popping on some Angelics. If if you're really struggling on attack rating, you don't even have Demon Limb even. You have nothing to pre-buff with. There's no way to get your AR to at least like 8,000 like I was mentioning earlier. Or even at least 6,000. Use Angelics. Otherwise though, it's not going to be as strong as High Lords ever because of the Deadly Strike. It's never going to be as good as that. Also means you don't have Leech. So now you need to like get Leech on your gloves, like using like Crushing Blow gloves or just some kind of Leech gloves. You might need to like, well, I mean, you can get at least Life Leech on String of Ears, right? You could definitely do that. Yeah, it might be a bit more of a struggle to get some other stats if you do this, but it definitely works really well. This is something that I think a lot of newer players are definitely familiar with. If you're just let's say you do a Zealer challenge to only use a Zealer from no gear at all, finding these especially. Absolutely. That's a good point. Any more questions, guys? That's a good question from 3 Snow in the chat. Very, very good question. Very, very good stuff. Very solid approach.
Good day.
But yeah. General though. Build owns for sure. Against P3 in a lot of cases, like P3 Trav especially, you don't even need this much damage reduction, but because you have all this life leash, but you know, it helps. One thing to note is that you're not always going to have 75% block on your teleport slot. You might, but you not necessarily are going to have max block because you don't want to put more dex than is required to wear your Haws, at least on your main hand. So like you might only have like 60% block on your swap, which is fine because you have more faster hit recovery. Like on my swap right now, I actually have so much. I have overstacked hit recovery. I'm hitting the 86 breakpoint even, which is kind of nice. Always mature. Always remember my emote, man. It's always green. What's up, man? You're still looking for Astrians, right? You found 3 Crown of Ages and only 1 V-Gaze. Yeah, for sure. Heck, you could even use options as cheap as like Death Sash and Death's Gloves for Cannot Be Frozen. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff. The problem though is that this only has 2 slots, so I don't recommend it. You can avoid it. You could use Train Belt instead of, but Raven Frost is just so good. It gives you attack rating. Like Raven Frost or Champion. That's usually going to be your ideals for the higher tier here for sure. Can the Zealers see why kids love the taste of Cinnamon Toast Crunch? No! It's not. Got a Vex though from Andy though. It's pretty sick. Not at all. All at FCR and FHR hardly they're long enough to hit telling. Yeah. Right, exactly. So having max block on your teleport swap isn't as important as having max block on your Zeal swap, your actually swap. But you definitely can do that if you want. So it's a possibility. You are going to sacrifice more vitality points though. Making use of that incredibly large increased chance of blocking stat on the Haws is really nice. And just getting max block easily and not worrying about having to get max block on your spirit just for teleporting. And how you doing? Yeah, I think we showed off all versions of the character. We showed them off in all the relevant ways. Of course, the Uber version can destroy Diablo clone as well. But you might notice that even the normal version, the standard version, even with the Phoenix, would still do decently against Ubers because it still has Crushing Blow. Matter of fact, if you put Gore Riders on that instead of the War Travs, it would have 50%, just like the Uber Killer version. So the Zealer can do everything very well with very minimal swaps, and you can swap out items like I showed to optimize it, but you don't necessarily have to. Zealer can just do it all. Like, you don't have to do a lot of thinking. You just put on the gear, it's pretty optimal, and you just go to town. No sexy. Yeah, it's not sexy. It's a Templars. Yeah, that's funny how that's the link for it. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, but yeah, guys, GG. I think that's gonna be it for the Zealer guide. If there are no more questions, hope you guys learned a lot about Zealer today. You can catch this build guide in my guide section on my YouTube, and you can also check out my PD2 guide section as well. Of course, we'll have timestamps for each of build setups, so you guys can refer to them later in case you guys want to get on them. You guys, of course, can like and subscribe this video if you enjoyed the guide and are enjoying a lot of these guides we're creating for Project Diablo 2 and LOD, and of course D2R alike, like this one. This is a D2R prep guide. This is D2R prep guide number 6. Yeah, I think we're 6 now. So yeah, definitely really good to understand the Zealer in this character, and it's a lot of fun. Fully recommend making one if you can, and get to it. Gonna be awesome stuff. Remember, you can always catch me at www.twitch.tv/darkunitley for 6 to 7 days a week of variety Diablo 2 action. This insanely awesome. It's far. See you guys later. See you guys for the next guide. Let's go.